Chapter 2081, Secret of the Black Book. Through speaking with Clear and Ink, Lin Ming was able to verify the memories of famine. He was able to confirm all sorts of information about the Great Abyssal Calamity 10 billion years ago. 10 billion years ago, the calamity of the 33 heavens had finally been ended by the Eternal Wall. The Azura Road Master and Immortal Sovereign joined forces, using their transcendent methods to forge the Eternal Wall and block off the Dark Abyss. After cutting off the source of these abyssals, they proceeded to kill the other ones that remained. Thus ended this great calamity. The Eternal Wall was a barrier that only intelligent life forms of the 33 heavens could pass. As for abyssal demons, they were sealed outside the Eternal Wall. But the Eternal Wall wasn't perfect and impregnable. As the wearing of time passed, many spacetime cracks would appear. Some abyssals were able to pass through these spacetime cracks and bypass the Eternal Wall. The more powerful an abyssal was, the lower the chances of them passing through these spacetime cracks. Like this, even if those abyssals that passed through the cracks possessed a peak Empyrean level strength, they still wouldn't be able to harm the 33 heavens to any large degree. But history was never without accidents. Billions of years ago, an incomparably terrifying abyssal demon somehow managed to pass through the Eternal Wall, bringing down a catastrophe unto all races of the 33 heavens. This catastrophe even continued until now. This abyssal was famine. As for how famine was able to pass through the Eternal Wall, Lin Ming wasn't able to find this out from famine's soul. Many of famine's memories should have been kept in its main body, and some parts were also sealed away. Lin Ming continued to explore famine's memories. Within the starry space he sat in the void. At this time, an ancient pitch black book floated before him. This black book was left behind by Imperial Prince Xishan. Lin Ming reached out a hand and gently traced its cover. Strange abyssal runes lit up, like the eyes of an abyssal demon flashing in the dark of night. After absorbing a massive amount of famine's memories and furthering his understanding of the abyssal laws, Lin Ming was now able to open the black book. He silently flipped open the cover. The thick black cover seemed to be sealed by some force field, making it incomparably heavy. This was not the first time he had opened this mysterious ancient book. But each time he did, he discovered new things. The reason was that these abyssal texts were too difficult to understand. Trying to decipher them with the limited fragments of information he had wasn't easy at all. The source of darkness, the abyssal ritual. Lin Ming read these words out loud and fell into a long period of contemplation. In front of him, the black book shimmered with a mystical light, like the book of fate in the hands of the king of hell. Lin Ming had already determined that this black book wasn't some rare cultivation method manual, nor was it some ancient secret technique, and it definitely wasn't a true divinity spirit treasure. It was a book of abyssal rituals, and what was written inside were all texts of abyssal rites, texts that contained profound symbolic meanings. These recitations of abyssal rites were completely unrelated to cultivation. They weren't able to directly enhance a martial artist's strength, but their value was still extraordinary. Within the ranks of the abyssals, there were 6 super abyssals similar to famine. When they were at their peak strength, they were situated somewhere between peak true divinity and beyond divinity. They were existences only inferior to the Azura Roadmaster. They were the totems of the countless devils in the dark abyss, incredibly horrifying existences. Underneath the command of each of these super abyssals was an influence of their own lineage. These influences were extremely powerful and contained countless abyssal demons. Many of these abyssals were comparable to Middle True Divinity Realm or even Upper True Divinity Realm characters. If it were 10 billion years ago and each one of these influences turned out in full strength, then they would be able to easily overwhelm the current 33 heavens, destroying all life within the universe. Compared to these super influences, even the good fortune St. Palace wasn't anything at all. However, in the Great Calamity 10 billion years ago, the ancient races also inflicted heavy losses on the Dark Abyss. The 6 great influences were the main forces of the war effort against the 33 heavens, and they had suffered the greatest losses. Even many of the 6 great abyssals died, and the forces beneath them nearly fell apart. Of these 6 great influences, each lineage possessed such a black book. The 6 black books were ceremonial rites, and the ceremony they were related to was concerned with the deepest and most mysterious place of the dark abyss, the demon god's tomb. The demon god's tomb was the foundation of the dark abyss and also the most enigmatic place in the dark abyss. Lin Ming originally wanted to find out more information about this demon god's tomb, but there wasn't much within Famon's soul. If this information was kept in Famon's main body, then there was nothing he could do to look for it. Of the 6 great influences, Lin Ming's black book belonged to the one named Ian. Just like Famon, Ian was the name of the superabyssal that led one of these great influences. When Ian was at its peak strength, it was equal to Famon. To hold the black book was tantamount to Ian being personally present. But Ian's true self had died in that great war 10 billion years ago. Lin Ming now suspected that when he entered the Azura Road's final trial for the second time and wrested away the demon relic from the Good Fortune Saint Sun's hands, this had been from a superabyssal that was killed by the Azura Roadmaster. If it had truly been a superabyssal as horrifying as Famine, then it was naturally impossible for it to leave behind such a small relic. Lin Ming guessed that the abyssal's main body had been used by the Azura Roadmaster for other purposes, and the demon relic left behind was only a tiny portion of that superabyssal's essence. After finding explanations for all these questions, Lin Ming slowly closed the black book. He stood up and flew towards the entrance of the final trial. "You are leaving?" Clear and ink appeared behind Lin Ming. Lin Ming nodded. "Yes." "Very well." Seeing Lin Ming's decisive appearance, Clear and ink no longer said anything. On this day, Lin Ming left the Azura Road. He entered the Saint Convocation Heaven from the Divine Realm, and then flew straight towards the Primeval Realm ruins. As early as his life or death battle with the Good Fortune Saint Sun, Lin Ming had already heard news about the Primeval Realm ruins. This was an incomparably broad land that existed independently from the 33 heavens. Countless lucky chances and treasures were buried here. A great reason why the saints were able to accumulate so much strength was highly related to the Primeval Realm ruins. And today, Lin Ming finally came to this land. Taking a broad look out, this was a dead and listless world. The skies were shrouded in gray, as if an eternal dusk had settled upon this land. There was an inexplicable divine pressure like the pall of hell covering this world, making one feel almost suffocated. Of course, this sort of deathly aura and pressure couldn't affect Lin Ming at all. But if a low-level martial artist were to come here, perhaps they might not even be able to take a single step forwards no matter how hard they tried. Lin Ming galvanized the strength within his inner world. The power of yin and yang wove together with the endless power of laws, forming sparkling divine runes. Like rainbow-hued marks being carved into space, they emitted infinite light that shattered this deathly aura. Lin Ming walked forwards one step at a time. Along the way, he saw bleached bones all around him. There were many bones, most of them decayed. Shattered bones littered the ground, covered in the mottled traces of endless years. The reason for these marks to appear was because of the thick deathly aura that covered this land. This sort of deathly aura was able to draw out all life force. If one's blood vitality was unstable and they walked through this land, then they would soon turn into a dried corpse. As for the speed at which their corpse decayed, it would be astonishingly fast. This really is a nearly dead world. Lin Ming recalled Famine's memories. He pondered for a moment. Because if a world died, all life within would gradually break down and come to an end. This was the shattering that the Azura Road Master spoke of. But according to his intuition, with this world having reached such a degree of decay, it should have long since been destroyed. But why had it continued to exist until now? Somehow, somewhere, could there be some laws supporting it so that not even the shattering was able to destroy this world? Lin Ming walked through this land, tasting the law fragments left behind by the endless years. This sort of silent aura faintly resonated with the death laws in his body. Death was silence. When a person died, they would return to dust. When a universe died, it would be annihilated into nothingness. In the end, all things in existence only left behind one thing in the end, that was nothing. On the distant horizon, one could see collapsed temples. Mountains of divine stone were piled up together. It was easy to imagine just how grand and magnificent they were in the past. There were many of these great temples, but not a single one was complete. All of them had become dilapidated ruins. These were structures created by powerhouses of the past, yet all of them had been corroded and damaged by the inexhaustible flow of time. With every step he took, Lin Ming could feel ripples of powerful auras all around him. These were auras left behind by ancient god kings. They remained even after billions of years, reminding all who came here just how prosperous and mighty they had once been. Lin Ming passed by a lake. The surface of it was like a mirror. Inside was a goddess bathing, her appearance beautiful and her charm devilish, captivating the heart, beckoning the soul. Seeing this scene, Lin Ming was startled. For such a scene to appear in this deathly still world was surprising. However, he immediately understood what this scene before him was. A pupil opened up between his eyebrows and a brilliant beam of divine light shot out, chopping onto the surface of the lake. The goddess shattered to pieces, turning into a wisp of strange law fragments that slowly vanished. These were the great world law fragments that had condensed and then manifested into reality. Lin Ming passed over a high mountain. Up above, endless divine demons beat upon drums, lightning wrapping around them as they all seethed like a rising tide. Lin Ming's inner world opened. Chaotic energy burst out, swallowing all of this divine demon aura. In the primeval realm ruins there was no ancient aura that could hinder Lin Ming's steps. He walked forwards without stopping. Although his pace appeared slow, the truth was that space had lost meaning beneath his feet. He walked for 7 days. During this time period, he once saw many saint martial artists enter into some underground ruins. These ruins were buried all throughout the primeval realm ruins. Countless dangers were hidden within, and many saint martial artists that entered were not able to leave. But there were always some people that went into these underground ruins and emerged with heaven-shocking lucky chances. Chapter 2082, The Eternal Wall. 7 days later, where the skies and land met, black fog chaotically swirled as if the world itself was boiling over. Dark black lighting wove together, the thunderclaps crashing into the ears. Turbulent storms raged wildly within this black fog, destroying all around them. Vaguely, it was as if some giant godly demon resided within, emitting a terrifying aura. A dark and boundless pool surface appeared in front of Lin Ming, seeming to go on to infinity. Seeing this and feeling the divine demon aura rushing towards him, Lin Ming's pupils shrank and brilliance lit up his eyes. This is it. From Famine's memories, the entrance to the dark abyss. The central region of the primeval realm ruins was the entrance to the dark abyss. In the past, Empyrean Primordius had also entered the dark abyss from here. The closer Lin Ming approached to that pitch-black abyss, the more that chaotic black fog surged and tumbled. Bang! When he reached the entrance, the black fog rose like a tide of darkness, crashing towards him with a roar. This black fog rose up to the skies, monstrous and threatening. It galloped over the world, causing great blasts to echo through the heavens and earth, as if the world would soon be destroyed. Since Lin Ming entered the primeval realm ruins, this was the first time he had truly felt pressure. The black fog contained an irresistible great strength. Contained within it was the remnant auras of supreme powerhouses. Moreover, there were more than just a few of these auras. Rather, it was like millions and billions of powerful ancient god kings were randomly striking out at the world without rhyme or reason. All martial artists that came here had to withstand this pressure. Below the Empyrean realm, being directly disintegrated to ashes here was a matter of fact. Even outstanding existences amongst Empyreans could exhaust all their effort and strength to withstand this pressure, sustaining injuries to enter the dark abyss. In the past, Empyrean Primordius was also the same. Lin Ming's thoughts stirred. The power of divinity erupted from his body, forming a protective golden barrier all around him. Then, the crazy black waves were no longer able to harm Lin Ming even a little bit. An attack that a peak Empyrean could barely withstand was naturally nothing at all to Lin Ming. The laws here are twisted, Lin Ming thought. He could feel that the entrance to the dark abyss was an incomparably strange space. Here, all laws were twisted, including those of space and time. If one didn't have a profound understanding of the laws, then it was possible to lose oneself in this chaotic labyrinth and be trapped here forever. With all these reasons combined together, just the entrance of this mysterious dark abyss was an absolute death zone. There wasn't a need to mention the even more dangerous world within. This was also the reason the dark abyss was such a riddle. The weak simply weren't able to enter. Only peerless powerhouses could enter, and they had to endure life-threatening risks in order to do so. Thus, people only possessed an extremely limited understanding into the dark abyss. It just wasn't possible to ask peak Empyreans to go to the dark abyss to find out information. Lin Ming paused for a moment. He could clearly see a channel within the distorted laws. Then, easily, like a straight arrow, he thrust deep towards the depths of the dark abyss. He didn't know how far he fell or how long he fell for. With a light cracking sound, a golden shadow smashed into his protective power of divinity and then collapsed. Lin Ming's thoughts stirred. He calmed his mind and looked out. To his surprise, he discovered that just outside the black fog which surrounded him, there was something that resembled golden grains of sand. Although these things were small, the smallest one was comparable to a meteor, possessing an incredible impact force. Within his hands, the power of divinity turned into chains that grabbed onto this grain of sand. He examined it closer. When this golden sand entered his hand, Lin Ming could see an incomplete but supremely powerful martial artist's aura within it. An ancient and dilapidated strength of a divine soul dissipated from the golden sand and slowly spread into Lin Ming's spiritual sea. This is a bone fragment of an ancient peerless ruler. Lin Ming sucked in a deep breath of air, not sure what feeling was in his heart. He had already learned from Famine's memories that after flying halfway into the entrance of the dark abyss he would see such a scene. But as he truly saw these fragments for himself, myriad complex emotions filled him. These broken bones were left behind from the Great War between the ancient races and abyssal demons 10 billion years ago. The entrance to the dark abyss was the final battlefield in that Great War 10 billion years ago. Countless heroic powerhouses had perished here. These broken bones were all that remained of them after they died in battle. Within the distorted laws, they had already existed for 10 billion years. Pa! More and more bone fragments appeared, constantly barraging Lin Ming's protective power of divinity. It was like endless hail crashing into a metal bucket. With Lin Ming's strength, these broken bones weren't able to harm him. But everyone that struck him caused his mind to shake. Each grain of these broken bones represented the heroic souls of the ancient races who had chosen to sacrifice themselves here. Normally, within this storm, these broken bones danced in the wind and remained undamaged. But now they smashed into Lin Ming's protective power of divinity and were instantly crushed to nothing. Lin Ming couldn't bear this. He started to avoid these broken bones on his own initiative. With a turn of his mind, the might of the 33 heavens laws appeared in this pitch-black abyss, opening up a channel in the distorted laws and paving the way forwards. Lin Ming stepped into this channel and avoided the barrage of broken bones. He turned into a beam of light that shot straight into the dark abyss. After flying for an unknown period of time, Lin Ming finally landed on Black Earth. This earth stretched on without end, vast and boundless, there was simply no end in sight. Lin Ming stood above this earth, quietly feeling it. A feeling of indescribable shock filled his heart. In truth, this land beneath him was no land at all, but something created by the joint efforts of the Azura Road and Immortal Sovereign, the Eternal Wall. In Famine's memories, Lin Ming could feel just how much it had feared this divine wall. This eternal wall had spanned the entire entrance of the dark abyss for 10 billion years now, and had gradually evolved into the appearance of land. Atop the eternal wall there was a channel that led deep into the dark abyss. Only intelligent life forms of the 33 heavens could pass through, but abyssals were actually isolated outside. Lin Ming followed the eternal wall. As he walked, the storms vanished and the black fog dispersed. He looked in all directions. All he could see in this gray and deathly stillness were broken bones scattered all over. These broken bones might have been eroded over billions of years, but some of them still shined like crystalline gems. 10 billion years ago, the Eternal Wall was the last battlefield where the ancient races and abyssal demons engaged in a brutal slaughter. It was unknown just how many peerless characters had perished here, how many abyssals had been slain. Even after 10 billion years, the killing intent still hadn't faded. It was more than enough to shock the heart. Walking atop the Eternal Wall, Lin Ming faintly felt as if the road before him was the river of time. Bones seemed to wash up periodically, falling onto the side of his path. Some of these bones came from abyssals and some came from ancient race masters. They were able to maintain their integrity without breaking apart into numerous tiny fragments. This proved that the masters of these remains had reached an inconceivable level of strength in life, otherwise it would be impossible for their bones to not break apart after 10 billion years and still remain so crystal clear. Even after such a long time passed, Lin Ming could see traces of battle all around him. These traces were not marked on the ground, but carved into the void. Sword marks, claw marks, saber marks, fist prints, spear holes, all of these attacks had forcefully pierced through the laws so that even though such a long time passed, Lin Ming could still feel a fierce killing intent from them. Some killing intent even stirred up wind and lightning and lingered with the energy of laws, as if some god king were sitting up high. Lin Ming even saw phantasmal illusions created by the overwhelming killing intent. He saw scenes of hundreds of millions of ancient race rulers rushing ahead of trillions upon quadrillions of holy lords. Their killing intent manifested into blood dragons that clawed at the world. Sighing deeply, Lin Ming walked alone. Slowly and steadily, he finally arrived at the center of the Eternal Wall. This was the channel that led to the dark abyss. And here, Lin Ming saw the first relatively complete construction he had seen ever since he entered the primeval realm ruins. This was an altar. From afar this altar was gray and gloomy, so broad that it was impossible to see the edges. It exuded an ancient solemnity, seeming as if it suppressed this entire world. Even a corner towered into the skies, incomparably grand. Although it was only an altar, it possessed a sense of overruling all of creation, like a divine god looking down upon the world and peering into the past and future. It made one feel small, as if they couldn't help but lay helpless before it. However, when Lin Ming truly neared it, he discovered that this altar was in truth only 100 feet high, as if everything he saw just then had been nothing but a mirage. The altar was completely covered in the aura of chaos. Here, chains of divine iron ran haphazardly across its surface. There seemed to be true dragons roaring from within these chains, true phoenixes flapping their wings, leviathans racing through the water, as if everything were contained within. This altar had existed for innumerable years. Some parts had already toppled and some of the runes carved atop it had dimmed, no longer bright. An altar formed by star essence. Although Lin Ming had obtained some information from Famon's memories, when he saw this altar for himself, he couldn't help but sigh in praise. To refine the essence from a star and then cast it into an altar. Only a small amount of essence could be extracted from a star, and to make this sort of altar it was unknown how many stars had to be used. Moreover, extracting the essence of a star was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Even a true divinity would find it difficult to do. However, when star essence was refined, it could exist for a time even longer than the stars themselves. It could last for billions of years without fading, immortal and eternal. Lin Ming's eyes skimmed over the altar and looked within it. A bronze temple was erected at the middle of the altar. It was incomparably ancient, with rust overlapping it like scales. Many areas had hollows. These were fist marks, sword marks, saber marks. In the depth of this temple, Lin Ming saw a skeleton. This skeleton was different from those scattered outside. This one was entirely complete and shimmered like carved crystal. Like a piece of art made of the finest jade, there wasn't a single flaw in it. This skeleton was stood in a standing position. Its hands were pressed together, its 10 fingers grasping each other, placed against its chest, as if it were praying. It was hard to imagine that such a skeleton could maintain such form without collapsing over such a long time. Seeing this skeleton, Lin Ming was shocked. Just whose skeleton was this? Why was it preserved in such a complete state? Chapter 2083, Bones of Crystal. Walking here, Lin Ming had seen countless skeletons that had been broken into pieces and scattered all over the eternal wall. There were also the bone fragments that drifted in the storm, and all of these fragments originated from peerless powerhouses. But, without exception, all of them were decayed and broken. With a horrifying passage of 10 billion years in addition to the violent energy within the storm, it was impossible for a skeleton to remain fully intact. But, this skeleton before him was an exception. Who was it? All sorts of thoughts and shadows of people flashed through Lin Ming's mind. If this skeleton didn't come from 10 billion years ago but came from someone who had appeared hundreds of millions ago instead, then it was understandable for it to be this complete. However, as Lin Ming probed, he discovered that his guess was wrong. This skeleton had in truth already fused together with the altar. It was a part of the altar, a peerless great array heart. Moreover, this altar had been forged from star essence and was undoubtedly left behind from 10 billion years ago. Star essence could remain without decaying after 10 billion years. If so, then this skeleton had been cast into the altar 10 billion years ago, and this was the reason it had been preserved intact all this time. Just this period of time alone caused Lin Ming to remove most of the figures that flashed in his mind. This skeleton must have come from someone who reached an unbelievably high boundary in the past. They might even have approached the realm beyond divinity, otherwise it would have been impossible for his skeleton to remain so complete. But why was it left here for 10 billion years instead of being entombed? Lin Ming fell silent. In fact, it wasn't just this skeleton that was before him. Broken bones were scattered all over the eternal wall, and these bones all came from peerless characters 10 billion years ago who perished in the Great Calamity. In that great war, although the 33 heavens had finally achieved victory, the ancient races had to pay a deep price to do so. However, what left Lin Ming puzzled was that there must have been survivors amongst the ancient races, so how come these survivors didn't bury the ancient powerhouses? How come they left them on this ancient battlefield and even in such a preserved state? Even mortals hope to be buried after their death. As for peerless martial arts powerhouses, after dying they hoped to leave behind a tomb and their inheritance. In the world of martial arts, this had already become custom. This was also that one's inheritance wouldn't be cut off and one's remains could be worshipped in peace. Lin Ming deeply sighed, a strange sorrow stirring in his mind. So many powerhouses had died and their remains had been scattered all over the abyss, their bones dancing in the storm. Just how pitiful a fate was this? Standing in front of this altar, Lin Ming quietly paid tribute to these heroes. Then, he hesitated for a moment before stepping onto the altar. Bloodstains marked it, and these bloodstains were painted into mystical totems that were spread all over the altar. Even after 10 billion years, these totems were still emitting a vast aura. This aura wasn't a Buddha-killing aura, but a certain kind of strength that stunned Lin Ming. It was a strength wrapped in warmth, dedication, passion. Killing aura, Lin Ming had seen all kinds before. But, this sort of warm strength was something he rarely saw. Lin Ming gently reached out a hand to trace these marks. Even though he had become considerably strong, feeling this blood left his heart racing with awe. It was hard to imagine just what cultivation the people who left behind these bloodstains had. Lin Ming slightly hesitated, then, he stepped onto these bloodstained totems. The moment he stepped onto the totems he felt a strange strength skim over him. In that moment, his entire body seemed to become transparent, and a part of his body was locked down by this strength. Then, killing intent erupted. This killing intent was what a mortal felt when facing a ravenous tiger. Lin Ming was startled. He suddenly held his breath. This is... Lin Ming remained motionless, silently revolving the energy in his body to the limit to deal with any possible dangers. However, as he revolved his energy, the killing intent became increasingly terrifying, as if this entire altar instantly turned into an ominous and hellish wasteland. As for that universal love, devotion, and warmth he felt, all of it turned into overwhelming hatred. Lin Ming didn't doubt that once this killing intent erupted, it would create a massive attack against him. This aura was mind-bogglingly strong, as if he were facing the will of all the ancient god kings who had perished on the battlefield. Facing such a will, it was possible he would instantly turn to ash. In this life or death moment, a light lit up in Lin Ming's mind. He accelerated the revolution of the power of divinity within his body to cover the power of demons in numerous layers. Meanwhile, he revolved his blood vitality to seal away the demon essence bloodline within him. Then, Lin Ming felt the killing intent locking onto him suddenly become much paler. Layers of strength swept over his body once more, seeming to distinguish what was within him and hesitating at the same time. Slowly, this strength hid away and the killing intent also vanished, everything returning to its previous state. The aura that shrouded the entire altar returned to that of universal love, devotion, and warmth once more. Soaked within, Lin Ming felt total relaxation and tranquility. Lin Ming let out a long breath. What happened just now left his palms wet with sweat. He faintly guessed that the strength which swept over him just now was aimed at abyssals. The power of demons within his body had stirred up the great array formation of the altar. But, the array formation had finally determined his identity, thus it had subsided. If an abyssal were to come here, they would be instantly slain. Understanding this, Lin Ming probed the ancient altar with his divine sense once more. Recalling the incomplete memory fragments of famine, Lin Ming gradually understood what occurred. This ancient altar suppressed the array eye of the eternal wall, stabilizing it. And, as a vital location of the eternal wall, this altar was protected with layers upon layers of protections. Abyssals were simply unable to approach this area. Otherwise, if this altar were to be destroyed, then the eternal wall would also be in danger of collapsing. If that occurred, then the consequences would be unthinkable. Not to mention anything else, just the skeleton of this peerless powerhouse before him was a priceless treasure. Even after 10 billion years it managed to remain like glittering crystal. Even when compared to a true divinity spirit treasure, it was much more precious. This skeleton naturally had to be protected by the array formation. This skeleton, could it have been left behind by Immortal Sovereign? This idea popped into Lin Ming's mind. He recalled peerless powerhouses that existed 10 billion years and thought of the Azura Roadmaster and Immortal Sovereign. But from what Clear and Ink said, the Azura Roadmaster was still alive. Then, this skeleton might be from the Immortal Sovereign. Lin Ming slowly stepped towards the skeleton. A skeleton would inevitably exude a gloomy and dreadful feeling. But to a martial artist this sort of feeling wasn't worth mentioning at all. Still, no matter how a skeleton was, it wasn't something that would give off an aesthetic sense. But, this skeleton was different. It was beautiful and flawless. Every inch of bone flowed with a faint brilliance, as if a curtain of moonlight was draped over it like liquid mercury. The 10 fingers were held together in devoted prayer, like an angel. This was a divine skeleton, like the most perfect art that existed between the heavens and earth. Lin Ming was silent for a moment. He carefully spread out his sense to touch this divine skeleton. At first he was cautious, fearing that he would disturb the eternal slumber of this peerless powerhouse, and also because he feared that his spiritual seed would suffer a backlash from touching the divine bone. Such a peerless character was sure to have been far stronger than he was, and if they left behind some remnant will or array formation, then it was possible he could end up injuring his spiritual seed. However, up until Lin Ming's sense reached the point between the skull's eyes, he didn't perceive any hostility at all. Although Lin Ming had absorbed demon essence, he hadn't turned into an abyssal. The power of demons was only used by him and didn't change the essence of his life. On this, he was completely different from Empyrean Primordius. Thus when Lin Ming suppressed the demon power in his body, all the array formations on the altar had quieted down. Finally, this allowed Lin Ming's soul force to touch the divine skeleton without any hindrance. In that moment when Lin Ming probed the skull of the divine skeleton, he could feel a wisp of soul aura from the divine skeleton's owner. It was formidable, mysterious, yet soft and pure. Such a soft and pure soul didn't seem like it could be from a man, but from a woman instead. Woman? Lin Ming was startled. And at this time, there was a light whistling sound as soul fires ignited in the two eye sockets of this divine skeleton. The two soul fires within the eye sockets were of different colors. The soul fires in the right eye were pure black and the soul fires in the left eye were blue. The pure black soul fires were like the underworld, somber and terrifying. The blue soul fires were like a hidden paradise, filled with vibrant life. Life and death samsara laws? Lin Ming's heart shook. These two soul fires symbolized the highest laws of the Holy Scripture's bodily universe. Lin Ming gazed at these two soul fires in a trance. Then, the light flowing upon the divine skeleton quickened and brightened. This brilliance gradually condensed into it and formed small dots of light that spread all over the skeleton. These dots of light were as small as grains of sand, stretching all over the divine skeleton. As they connected together, it seemed as if the entire divine skeleton was burning in the glow of a fire, becoming increasingly crystalline. The average person wouldn't be able to determine just what significance these dots of light held. However, what sort of eyesight did Lin Ming possess? As he saw these dots flash and shimmer, his eyes brightened with them. Just what were these dots of light? These were clearly tight gatherings of law runes. These runes were far too small, thus they only seemed to appear like dots of light. They were like tiny Buddhist scriptures, overlapping again and again with countless numbers stacked on top of each other. When ancient peerless powerhouses cultivated laws, these laws would eventually turn into runes that were carved into their flesh and blood and even their skeletons. This was the same for Lin Ming. After going through 2 heavenly tribulations with his ninefall and Empyrean breakthroughs, countless law runes were fused into his body. However, in truth, these law runes wouldn't be preserved forever. As a powerhouse died in time past, these law runes would slowly fade away from their body. There were also peerless powerhouses that were unwilling to have their bones be perceived by others. Upon their death, they would disperse their flesh and blood and bones, scattering away all the law runes they possessed. A marvelous sight was occurring in front of Lin Ming. Law runes were appearing on this skeleton that came from 10 billion years ago. It was simply inconceivable. However, what happened next left him even more astonished. Lin Ming stared at the point between the divine skeleton's eyes. There, a diagram appeared, one that caused storms to stir up within Lin Ming's heart. Chapter 2084, Identity of the Divine Skeleton. Between the eyebrows of the crystal divine skeleton, flower petals of light appeared. These petals were like dots of cinnabar. As they formed, they gathered around a center, forming a strange flower. There were 9 flower petals in total. Each one seemed to condense the most beautiful sights in the world, causing one's mind to fall into reverie. As this deep red flower reflected in Lin Ming's pupils, he stood there transfixed for a long time. A long time ago, 7,000 years in the past, almost 12,000 years when he counted his time in tragic Death Valley, Lin Ming had entered the primal god race's Azura forbidden zone. In his trial within the coal ice mirror, he had once seen a peerless woman dressed in black. This woman had an appearance completely the same as Shang Mei. Their temperament, their attitude, their appearance, everything was similar. It was impossible that this was a mere coincidence. And between that woman's eyebrows, there was a mark composed of 9 flower petals. The only difference between that woman in the cold ice mirror and this skeleton before him was that within the cold ice mirror, that mysterious woman only had 8 flower petals fully unfurled on her mark. The final flower petal was small, not fully stretched out. But now in front of Lin Ming, 9 flower petals were in full bloom. Their light was sharp and brilliant, leaving one intoxicated with their beauty. This is... Xiang Mei's unrivaled appearance flashed in Lin Ming's mind. There were 2 possibilities. One of them was that this sort of flower petal mark belonged to a certain type of person, and this crystalline divine skeleton and the mysterious woman in the cold ice mirror were both this type of person. However, this was an extremely unlikely possibility. After all, this type of peerless woman was simply far too rare 10 billion years ago. Thus, the more likely explanation was that this crystalline divine skeleton belonged to the woman in the cold ice mirror. She had died here and her bones were preserved for 10 billion years. Could it really be that Xiang Mei was the reincarnation of a super powerhouse from 10 billion years past? Thinking of this possibility, Lin Ming felt it was far too ridiculous. 10 billion years was simply far too long ago. What sort of peerless powerhouse could pass the river of 10 billion years after death to reincarnate? Moreover, although Xiang Mei was fierce, the truth was that she was suppressed by the Soul Emperor. There was not just a simple disagreement between Xiang Mei and the Soul Emperor, the two could be described as sharing a deep grudge. From this point, if Xiang Mei was truly the reincarnation of a peerless character from 10 billion years ago, how could she be restrained by the Soul Emperor? All sorts of ideas raced through Lin Ming's mind. He looked at the flower petals. With his sense, he couldn't be wrong. The flower petals he saw right now were identical to the ones that the mysterious woman in the cold ice mirror possessed. Not only were they similar in shape, but their aura was also the same. As for why there was a difference in the 9th flower petal, this might be because these flower petals were a manifestation of the cultivation method that the mysterious woman in the cold ice mirror trained in. For instance, the grand reincarnation art. With every reincarnation, an additional flower petal would appear between the woman's eyebrows. With 9 reincarnations, the flower petals would be complete, reaching perfection. When Lin Ming had seen the black-clothed woman in the cold ice mirror, she had just finished her 8th reincarnation and had yet to complete the 9th revolution. And now it was obvious that before this mysterious woman perished, she had reached perfection in the grand reincarnation art. Upon realizing this, Lin Ming wasn't sure what he felt. The great Tao was boundless and the heavens and earth were heartless. An ancient beauty that could bring the downfall of the worlds, a goddess of peerless grace and talent, even someone like this couldn't escape the fate of becoming nothing but bones. As for those ancient rulers of 100 races, those peerless proud sons of heaven, in the end they too turned to dust, their bones scattered in the wind. This was destiny, the final fate that no one could avoid. Lin Ming deeply bowed towards the remains of this goddess. And after he bowed, the soul fires in the goddess' eye sockets slowly extinguished. All that remained were the runes on the surface of the bones. The runes glittered, allowing Lin Ming to clearly see the laws within. These runes were all slowly cultivated by this ancient peerless woman. What they contained included the universe of the body and the samsara of life and death recorded within the Holy Scripture. Compared to the Holy Scripture, the runes on the goddess remains gave no hints. There was no beginning and no end, all there was were endless runes, each one more mysterious and complex than the last. These runes originated from the Holy Scripture. But after fusing together with the mysterious woman's own understandings and comprehensions, they were no longer the same as the Holy Scripture. If one didn't understand the Holy Scripture, if one didn't have a deep martial arts foundation, then it would be completely impossible to understand just what these runes were. Even for Lin Ming, wanting to understand these numerous convoluted bone runes wasn't easy at all. He rapidly browsed through them, and then recorded them all in his mind using his formidable memory. In the past, Lin Ming had only seen the pages of death of the Holy Scripture. As for the pages of death, they were in memories left behind to him by Xiang Mei in that tiny part of her soul source. They were in truth extremely incomplete. Lin Ming had relied on his own comprehensions and personally understood samsara through death to continue the pages of death. In this state, as Lin Ming saw these bone runes left behind by this peerless woman from 10 billion years ago, it was equal to making up many missing places in his own holy scripture laws. Lin Ming slowly verified these bone runes with his own comprehensions, one at a time. He felt his mind open and new realizations pour in. The martial arts civilization was a process of accumulation. Although there were proud children of heaven with outstanding talent capable of producing their own self-created cultivation methods, all these self-created cultivation methods had foundations based on the inheritances of their predecessors. It was impossible for anyone to create a cultivation method that far surpassed the current level of the martial arts civilization. No matter how many reincarnations Lin Ming underwent, no matter how many samsaras of life and death he observed in the world, no matter how profound his comprehensions were, it was impossible for his laws in the pages of death to be as complete as that of the immortal sovereign from 10 billion years ago, who had focused his lifetime of energy on the Holy Scripture. And now, with the true Holy Scripture's pages of death before him, Lin Ming was undoubtedly able to further his Holy Scripture laws. Lin Ming greedily remembered all he saw. A quarter hour passed. The shimmering runes of the divine skeleton began to darken. It was clear that the runes could only manifest for a short period of time. Lin Ming's pupils widened and he sped up his reading pace. These incomparably complex runes swiftly passed through Lin Ming's mind and were recorded deep in his memory, marked into his spiritual sea. This continued until the light of the bones faded away. By now, Lin Ming had memorized all of the bone runes. Who? The last wisp of light vanished and darkness returned to the altar temple. The divine skeleton also became tranquil once more. Lin Ming faced the skeleton and bowed a final time. When his mental strength probed the crystalline divine skeleton, the bone runes had lit up. This was clearly not a coincidence. Could it be that the Holy Scripture laws in his body had activated the bone runes somehow? Or could it be that there was some wisp of residual consciousness in this divine skeleton that managed to be preserved due to the array formation in this altar? If this were true, then these bone runes were intentionally revealed to him by this wisp of consciousness. As Lin Ming thought of this, he became increasingly puzzled and uncertain as to the events of the great calamity 10 billion years ago. Just what connection did this mysterious woman who looked like Shang Mei have with the immortal sovereign? The cultivation method came from the same lineage, the Holy Scripture laws. It was clear that they were closely related to each other, and at the time when Lin Ming entered the Azura Forbidden Zone's cold ice mirror, the hostility that the mysterious woman showed to the lineage of the Azura Roadmaster proved this point. He didn't know what level of strength this mysterious woman reached. Even if she hadn't stepped beyond divinity, she was likely extremely close. Could this mysterious person be the same as Immortal Sovereign? As soon as Lin Ming thought of this, he shook his head. In the planet-sized heavenly palace and the galactic battlefield in the Akashic Dream universe, he had seen the phantom left behind by Immortal Sovereign more than once. He had obviously been a man, completely different from this mysterious woman. But for this mysterious woman to be Immortal Sovereign's relative, such as his daughter or little sister, just didn't seem too likely. It was true that a family with an outstanding bloodline would have a higher chance of producing powerhouses, but to produce two people who neared or stepped beyond divinity, this was a bit too exaggerated. Lin Ming didn't understand any of this, nor did he spend more time thinking about it. At this time, he spread his sense outwards into the bronze temple. Within it was a slowly spinning purple vortex. This purple vortex was a part of the Eternal Wall and also the channel leading from the Eternal Wall to the Dark Abyss. After passing through this purple vortex, what awaited underneath was the Dark Abyss. In the abyss there were endless numbers of abyssal demons. And this purple vortex was a channel that only intelligent life forms of the 33 heavens could pass. In addition to the killing array of the Dark Altar, with these two insurances, there would be no abyssals that dared to come here to die. Lin Ming let out a deep breath. Then, he leapt into the purple vortex. Chapter 2085, Dark Abyss. The moment Lin Ming passed through the eternal wall, he felt as if he were swimming through a river of time that flowed on for billions upon billions of years. He didn't know how much time passed, perhaps thousands of years, perhaps just a mere instant, but during this time all sorts of chaotic scenes raced through his mind. Then, he suddenly arrived on a black land. This land was incomparably desolate. Everywhere he looked there were bare rocks that stretched out to infinity. Floating above this land, he could feel a deep and heavy permanence. 9 suns hung high in the skies. Without exception, each one of these 9 suns was blood red, and the sunlight they emitted caused one's blood vitality to faintly resonate with it. This is the abyss. Lin Ming took a deep breath. The air here was burning hot and carried with it the faint smell of blood. This sort of air could subtly affect a person's mind, slowly turning them violent and crazy. Lin Ming felt his surroundings. Then, his figure flickered and he flew to a distant black mountain. Hiding in this remote mountain, Lin Ming's body started to change. His joints emitted crackling explosive sounds. Layers of scales and bone armor appeared on him and his limbs became thicker and more stout. Hideous bone spikes jutted out from his elbows, and curved horns grew out of his head. On his back, a fearsome tail extended downwards. His eyes turned blood red and his aura became vicious and dangerous. He had completely taken the appearance of an abyssal demon, and not just that, but layers of demon power covered him, forming a faint black mist around him. At this moment, Lin Ming had thoroughly become an abyssal. After cultivating the 9 stars of the Dao Palace to the 6th star and absorbing all sorts of top-quality bloodlines, Lin Ming had already gained the ability to easily manipulate his bones and muscles, allowing him to transfigure his appearance however he wished. In the past, Lin Ming had absorbed the essence of Famine's flesh and blood. Not just that, but in the Azura Road's final trial he had also absorbed the demon relic, and during the process there was a period of time where his body had taken the appearance of an abyssal. The power of demons and the demon bloodline had tried to invade Lin Ming's body and possess him, but in the end he had subdued and digested it. Now, Lin Ming could branch out this strength to easily manifest the aura of an abyssal. His essence was that of a human, but if he were to disguise himself as an abyssal, then with his true divinity-level strength it would be difficult for any abyssal to see through him. This was because Lin Ming had absorbed the essence of Famine and also the demon relic. Since each of them was one of the 6 great totem rank abyssals, their abyssal bloodlines could not be any more pure. Using a quarter-hour of time, Lin Ming constantly adjusted the frequency of the demon power in his body and also checked over himself again and again to prevent there being any flaws in his disguise. He continued this until he felt it was perfect. Lin Ming believed that even if Xiao Moxian were to stand in front of him, she would find it difficult to recognize him. That boiling demon power had covered all of his original aura. He stretched a finger. This finger ended with a black and terrifying nail. On the end of Lin Ming's fingertip, layers of black lines appeared, dancing in the air. These lines condensed together, turning into different shapes. Sometimes it was a sphere, sometimes it was a cube. Finally, these figures completely collapsed, leaving behind a single point and becoming a mini black hole. The mini black hole greedily swallowed all the surrounding energy, and even light vanished when it entered. This strange phenomenon belonged to Famine, it was the laws of swallowing. Within Tragic Death Valley, Lin Ming had used 1,000 years to absorb Famine's essence and unlock its memories. Now, not only could he simulate an abyssal aura, but he could even replicate the laws of swallowing. It could be said that Lin Ming truly controlled a portion of Famine's abilities. Although his laws of swallowing weren't as strong as Famine's, it was more than enough for him to use for absorbing energy for his own cultivation. With the swallowing laws supporting him, Lin Ming's cultivation speed and ability to accumulate energy would rise by a mind-boggling amount. Whoosh! The black sphere vanished. He subconsciously cracked his wrists, a loud crackling sound coming from them. What he wanted to do now was to find a high-level abyssal demon and see if it would recognize him. A human had come to the world of the abyssals and had disguised himself as an abyssal to probe their secrets and steal their lucky chances. This strange feeling left a playful smile tugging at Lin Ming's lips. When this smile was joined with his current appearance, it gave off a fierce and bizarrely macabre feeling. This seemed like the vivid image of a sinister and cruel demon, and if martial artists of the 33 heavens were to see him, they would desperately try to kill him with everything they had. Lin Ming's figure flashed. His tall and strong body tore through the void, rapidly flying away. In an instant he flew thousands of miles. Then, he fell down into a wild forest. In Famon's memories, the dark abyss was like a pagoda. It was divided into different layers. Each layer of the abyss was vast and boundless. It was hard to find where its edges were. Every layer of the abyss had 9 suns hanging high in the skies, forming a complete world. From one layer to another, trillions of space channels connected them. These space channels overflowed with violent space storms. If an abyssal whose body wasn't strong enough entered one of these space channels, then it was possible they would be torn to shreds by the space storms. The deeper one went into the abyss, the more intense the space storms became. Thus, generally speaking, low-level abyssals were gathered in the first few layers of the dark abyss. As for the high-level abyssals, they lurked in the lower layers. They were like beasts hiding in the dark, waiting for the day they could run out of the abyss and swallow all living beings in the 33 heavens. Lin Ming didn't plan to stay in the first several layers. It was impossible for these low-level abyssals to see through his disguise. Moreover, if he stayed in the upper levels, it would be impossible for him to find lucky chances. The reason Lin Ming came to this forested mountain was because after probing the area with his sense, he discovered that there was a space channel hidden here, one that led to the next layer of the abyss. However, as Lin Ming was looking for the space channel in accordance with what he sensed earlier, his footsteps paused. He heard a rustling sound from the forest and also a faint killing intent. It was clear that some sort of aggressive being was approaching. Although Lin Ming didn't have any interest in killing the low-level abyssals at the first layer of the dark abyss, since he didn't have any relation to them, he might as well use this chance to test his laws of swallowing. Lin Ming stood still, waiting for the abyssal to approach. Or, perhaps there was more than one, because there were 4 or 5 dangerous auras locked onto him. However, when Lin Ming spread out his own sense and locked onto these abyssals, he actually stiffened. Just what was this? Lin Ming looked at a corner of the wild forest with disbelief thick on his face. He subconsciously gripped his fists. Shwa! Shwa! The bushes of the wild forest were separated, and a few aggressive beings with fierce and distorted expressions emerged from the shadows. Seeing these beings, Lin Ming sucked in a breath of cold air. He would never have dreamed that after arriving at the dark abyss, the first attack against him would not be from abyssals, but by humans of the 33 heavens. No, these weren't humans, but some sort of ancient race that possessed a shape and appearance similar to that of humans. However, from their distorted complexions and fierce features, their curved knees and spines and their arms that nearly hung to the ground, Lin Ming could clearly feel that these beings in front of him were not the usually seen intelligent life forms of the 33 heavens, but some sort of primitive and savage being without much intelligence of their own. There were 5 people, 4 men and 1 woman, all of them stark naked. Their limbs brushed against the ground and bloodthirsty hope filled their eyes. These were eyes that only wild beasts would have. The ancient raceman in the lead emitted a deep and bass roar. He opened his mouth, revealing fangs like those of a blood-sucking vampire. It was clear that this ancient raceman considered Lin Ming an enemy, and even food. How could this be? Lin Ming found this situation hard to accept. And at this time, the ancient raceman roared and led the several people behind him to rush towards Lin Ming. Their movements were like those of vicious beasts, but to Lin Ming, who had reached a true divinity level of strength, they were nothing but slow and clumsy, unable to harm him at all. As long as Lin Ming wished it, then the heads of these 5 wild ancient race savages would fall to the ground. However, Lin Ming's mind was in a mess and he simply didn't want to kill these savages. His figure flashed and he drew backwards like a ghost, instantly appearing a mile away. The 5 savages emerged empty-handed. They were immediately enraged. And at this time, Lin Ming's thoughts stirred once more. He looked up in a direction. There, he could see 4 or 5 other living beings rapidly flying over. These beings were covered in black armor. Their bodies were tall and thick, and they held large axes in their hands. Their eyes were blood red, and black energy tumbled around their bodies. They were clearly abyssal demons. Whoosh! An axe was hurled out by the leading abyssal. It tore through the air, howling in an arc as it circled around towards those 5 savages. Blood shot into the air. 2 savages were decapitated by the axe, their blood splashing out. Hee. We caught another 5 prey. Although their cultivation is a bit lower, it's good enough. All of them are mine. The abyssal in the lead spoke in the abyssal language. Thanks to Famine's memories, Lin Ming was able to understand him. These words left Lin Ming dazed. He seemed to realize a possibility. In the dark abyss, these ancient race people were considered the same as vicious beasts. All of them were regarded as prey. And the abyssals were hunters. They captured and killed their prey in the open land, and this was how they gained experience. Similar to when humanity developed the wild universe. In the dark abyss, everything was reversed. The intelligent life forms of the 33 heavens had become the prey instead. Lin Ming had no idea what had occurred in the abyss. In the memories of Famine, the dark abyss originally wasn't like this. Chapter 2086, Fate of the Ancient Races. Ha 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 ha. How fun! The abyssal demon slashed out his axe once more. Another ancient raceman had his neck sliced off. After a moment, only 2 of the 5 savages remained. These 2 savages could clearly feel fear. They began to run in different directions, but how could the abyssal demon chasing them let them go? The abyssal demon hurled 2 axes, each flying in a different direction and aimed at the back of an ancient race savage. With the abyssal demon's strength, accomplishing this was easy. However, just as those 2 savages were about to die, the axes seemed to strike upon some sort of invisible energy wall. With 2 loud cracking sounds, the axes fell to the ground. Taking advantage of this moment, the 2 savages wildly fled deep into the forest. What? The abyssal demon that shot out the axes was stunned. Then, he frowned, his complexion darkening. He slowly turned to Lin Ming, derisively sneering as he said, "Are you the one that blocked me?" Lin Ming was silent. Killing intent erupted from the abyssal demon. He didn't know why Lin Ming would rescue those 2 pathetic creatures, but at this time, Lin Ming's lack of explanation and his contemptuous expression caused the abyssal demon to become even more furious. He felt that Lin Ming was intentionally trying to pick a fight and was taunting him. "You are courting death." The abyssal demon spat out. Voila! With a light sound, the 5 abyssals surrounded Lin Ming. These abyssal demons were all Iron Claw demons. They were one of the relatively low-level abyssals of the dark abyss. Their limbs were sturdy and powerful, and they were extremely fast. Their claws could freely extend in and out of their bodies, and were also sinisterly sharp. At this time, the head abyssal demon no longer used axes. Rather, from between the spaces of his fingers, 3-foot-long claws suddenly popped out. These claws were like icy cold sabers. If an Iron Claw demon could cultivate to the level of an Empyrean, their claws would be equal to an Empyrean spirit treasure. An Iron Claw demon that used their claws could display their greatest combat strength. "Kill him!" One of the Iron Claw demons shouted out loud. However, the head of the Iron Claw demons waved his hand, motioning for the others not to act rashly. The abyssal demon squinted his eyes and looked Lin Ming up and down, a cold light flashing in his eyes. The abyssal demon was motionless and his followers didn't move either. The head Iron Claw demon stared at Lin Ming for a full 10 breaths of time. Then, he stretched out his tongue and lightly licked his claws. "Royalty?" the Iron Claw demon asked Lin Ming. As this question fell into the ears of the other Iron Claw demons, all of them were startled. From within Lin Ming's body, this Iron Claw demon was able to feel a pure demon bloodline. The aura of this kind of demon bloodline would only appear in the bodies of high-rank abyssals. Now, the feeling that Lin Ming exuded was like that of a royal abyssal. This was no minor matter. Royal abyssals possessed an extraordinary and lofty status. To kill them for no reason was a capital crime. Moreover, generally speaking, royal abyssals weren't weak. Wanting to kill one wouldn't be easy at all. But even so, there were numerous royal abyssals slaughtered every year. The reason for this was that abyssals could devour each other. If an abyssal demon swallowed a royal abyssal, they could obtain a part of that royal abyssal's bloodline, improving their own body and greatly enhancing their strength. The abyssals were a ruthless and tyrannical race. There was often slaughter within their own race, and in this sort of endless slaughter the abyssals would constantly evolve and transform. Now, facing Lin Ming, this Iron Claw demon fell into a conundrum. On one hand, he wanted to kill Lin Ming and steal away his royal bloodline. But on the other hand, he feared Lin Ming's strength. He didn't know Lin Ming's background either. If he rashly acted and kicked an iron sheet, then that would be stupid of him. The several Iron Claw demons rapidly spoke with sound transmissions. The opportunity was placed right in front of their eyes and they didn't want to let it go, but they didn't think this was safe either. As the Iron Claw demons discussed the situation amongst themselves, Lin Ming casually lifted his hand. The several abyssals were startled. They didn't know just what Lin Ming was doing. All they saw was Lin Ming simply cut a finger through the air, and then their eyes blurred as the world turned upside down. Puff! 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 5 sharp slicing sounds filled the air. The heads of the 5 Iron Claw demons were instantly separated from their bodies. As their giant heads fell onto the ground, they bounced like rubber balls. In their final moments of death, all that filled their faces was utter disbelief. How could this? The head of the Iron Claw demons could see his own body standing still and growing farther and farther away. His consciousness turned blurry. Even now he had no idea how Lin Ming had killed them. But the moment the Iron Claw demon was about to die, he felt an irresistible strength cover his spiritual sea. Then, a soul-tearing pain racked his entire being as his spirit mark was forcefully erased by Lin Ming. Lin Ming began using the magic cube to read through the memories of these abyssals. He wanted to know everything about why they were hunting the ancient races. These Iron Claw demons were of a very low level. As Lin Ming read through their memories, it was the same as a mortal scholar reading through the well-known texts of the nation. It was rapid and easily understood at a glance. Soon, Lin Ming obtained the information he wanted. The situation was close to what he had guessed, and in truth was even worse than what he had thought. The Dark Abyss had always had people of the ancient races. This even included the number 1 ancient race of the 33 heavens, the primal god race. And these ancient race people came from the Great Calamity 10 billion years ago, when they were captured and brought here by the Abyssals. In the past, when the Azura Road Master and Immortal Sovereign laid down the Eternal Wall to isolate the Dark Abyss from the 33 heavens, these ancient race captives had inevitably been trapped in the Dark Abyss. For all this time, the Abyssals raised these ancient race people and transformed these captives. They left behind demon brands in their bodies, turning them into slaves, living furnaces, food, alchemy materials, experimental materials, and so forth. In the Great War 10 billion years ago, the destiny of the 33 heavens ancient races had been shattered. Beneath the terrifying existence of the Abyssal's curse, the ancient races began to slowly decline. For instance, even an incredibly powerful race like the Primal God race found it increasingly difficult to reproduce. However, within the Dark Abyss, these ancient race captives weren't affected by this curse. They retained their original ability to reproduce. 10 billion years was enough time for these ancient race captives to multiply and expand. Their population increased by countless times, until they covered every layer of the Dark Abyss. Due to the careful efforts of the Abyssals, the bloodlines of these ancient race captives had slowly merged together as one. The Abyssals used curse arts, subjugation techniques, slave seals, and so forth to constantly enslave the ancient race descendants. At the same time, the Abyssals even planted abyssal control factors in the bloodlines of the ancient races. Slowly, the ancient races became no different than cattle, raised in captivity in large numbers by the Abyssals. The Abyssals sealed away the intelligence of these ancient race descendants. Then they picked the best among them and let them loose in the wild, turning them into prey. The ancient races had outstanding talent. Even after becoming savages, they still retained a formidable combat strength. They were used as hunting targets for low-level Abyssals. Through killing these ancient race captives, the low-level Abyssals were able to hone their combat skills. And deeper in the Dark Abyss, there were even some ancient race savages that hadn't had their intelligence sealed away. They still retained their cultivation ability and even had some crude inheritances. As life forms with intelligence, they were even stronger. But their fate was to be released into the wild mountains and plains to be hunted down by higher-level Abyssals. Many Abyssal influences would organize hunting parties to kill these ancient race descendants. There were even Abyssal armies that marched directly into the wilderness and slaughtered massive numbers of ancient race members. To the Abyssals, the ancient races were their grinding stone. This was like mortals raising a tiger in a cage. They would throw live chickens to the tiger to eat in order to maintain its wild and fierce nature. And so upon being born, the ancient race descendants who retained their intelligence faced the fate of being hunted down and slaughtered. But with their martial arts civilization ruined, it was impossible for them to truly organize to resist the Abyssals. In the depths of the Dark Abyss, over these billions of years, many proud children of heaven had emerged from the ranks of the ancient races. They were outstanding individuals with amazing talent and formidable strength. They weren't willing to accept the fate of being hunted down by Abyssals for generation after generation, and organize large influences to resist them. But in the end, all of them were mercilessly suppressed. Ultimately, the fate of these proud children of heaven was to be eaten up by the Abyssals. After understanding all of this, Lin Ming sighed. He never thought there would be a day when the intelligent life forms of the 33 heavens would devolve into prey and be recklessly hunted down by others. Within the Dark Abyss there were also large and great cities. These cities weren't like the refined and freshly polished cities of the 33 heavens, clad in jade and gold, but were filled with a primal and ancient flavor instead. The buildings here were much larger than the buildings of the 33 heavens. The stones used for them were the most primitive and basic stones. They were rough and covered with sharp edges. This was the 12th layer of the Dark Abyss. From the memories that Lin Ming obtained from famine, the Dark Abyss was divided into 18 layers, and starting from the 10th layer there would be true divinity-level Abyssals. On the 10th, 11th, and 12th levels, there was only a single true divinity-level Abyssal. They were the rulers of their layers. Downwards, in the 13th, 14th, 15th layers and beyond, the number of true divinity Abyssals increased and they were also stronger. In the lowest 17th and 18th layers, there would be totem-level Abyssals. In other words, they were super-abyssal demons like Famine, Ian, and Deep. However, in Famine's memories, information about the Dark Abyss was that of several billion years ago and wasn't entirely accurate. For instance, billions of years ago the ancient races hadn't yet been bred into prey by the Abyssals, but were different from how they were now. Billions of years was a long enough time for many matters to occur. Lin Ming wouldn't be surprised if several more true divinity-level Abyssals appeared in the 12th layer. With such thoughts in mind, Lin Ming entered the main city of the 12th layer, Demon Snake City. This city occupied an area of thousands of miles. Just by nearing the city, one could feel a vast demonic power and pressure covering them. Low-level martial artists would have no way to stay in this pressure. If a human were to be covered in this demon power, then the strength they would be able to display would be weakened. But for powerful Abyssals, the situation was completely reversed. When they were around this city, whether it was in combat strength or cultivation speed, they would rise to a new level. The city walls of Demon Snake City were extremely special. They weren't formed by rectangular blocks, but by a massive circular tube that lay on the ground. The city walls were 1,000 feet high and thousands of miles long. They were black in color and covered in large dark red ring patterns. When Lin Ming approached the city walls, he could feel an infernal energy as deep as a sea and a turbulent blood vitality gush out from it. This blood vitality was filled with a faint oppressive feeling. Lin Ming could even feel it transmit through the ground beneath him, pulsating with life. The city walls were alive. This couldn't even be called a city wall. In truth, it was actually a giant snake that was 4,000 to 5,000 miles in length. This creature was called the Bash Serpent. The Bash Serpent lay around Demon Snake City, circling it. It had fallen into a deep slumber and its body was now used as a natural wall for Demon Snake City. The name Demon Snake City was also due to this Bash Serpent. This Bash Serpent was a true divinity-level abyssal, the ruler of the Dark Abyss's 12th layer. When Lin Ming arrived at the outskirts of Demon Snake City, he looked upon this massive snake abyssal from afar. A brilliant light flashed in his eyes. The road in front of Demon Snake City could hold 100 horses standing side by side. Of course, abyssals wouldn't ride horses. The mounts they rode would also be abyssals. These mounts came in all different kinds. Some were like lizards, some were like cows, some were like giant cyclops carrying giant metal bars. The classification categories of abyssals were extremely complex. There were countless different subraces, and all of these subraces had strict hierarchical differences. High-ranking races could enslave and even kill low-ranking races. And these races were ranked according to how formidable their bloodlines were, their intelligence, their capability of learning, their type of talent, and many other such factors. Before this, when Lin Ming encountered the Iron Claw demons, they were a weak abyssal species. Most Iron Claw demons were far weaker than the mounts that these residents of Demon Snake City rode on. Out of all abyssal demons, the highest ranked were the 6 great totems. Next were the royalty. Royal abyssal demons possessed the high-grade bloodline of the 6 totem abyssals. They were generally distributed in the lowest layers of the Dark Abyss. And Lin Ming's current status was that of a true and blue royal. Within his body was the essence of famine as well as the demon relic left behind by what was likely also a totem-level abyssal. Like this, in the entire Dark Abyss, if Lin Ming said he wasn't a royal, then no abyssal would believe him. When Lin Ming entered the city, he could clearly feel the guard soldiers looking at him with surprise and envy in their eyes. It was clear that they recognized his status as a royal. But a royal status didn't always win respect and envy in the Abyss. Rather, most of the time it simply brought a fatal disaster upon oneself. As Lin Ming walked down the street, he often saw abyssals look at him with greedy and covetous hope in their eyes. It was clear that they wanted to eat him up and obtain his bloodline. Although there's some laws in the Dark Abyss that protected royals, the truth was that in the wild and open wilderness, killing and robbing was a common occurrence and it was incredibly difficult to find the murderer. In addition, abyssals were a cruel race that advocated survival of the strongest, the most ruthless jungle laws. To them, strength was everything. If one didn't have strength and hope to protect themselves with laws, that was far too naive. As Lin Ming entered the city, he quietly paid careful attention to the Bash Serpent. This was the abyssal that ruled the 12th layer, and from beginning to end it had never paid any attention to him. This was also reasonable. Originally, Lin Ming had near-perfect camouflage techniques, and after he suppressed his own cultivation he appeared common in the crowds. Lin Ming passed through a high complex built of black stone and arrived at a restaurant in a corner of the city. On the sides of this restaurant stood 2 100-foot-tall cyclops. These cyclops were similar to the Coiling Ridge giants that Lin Ming saw outside the Azura Road's forsaken mortal tomb. They possessed immense strength and low intelligence. They were easily tamed and made some of the best demon slaves and mounts. Some abyssals tamed cyclops in ways that mortals raised precious dogs. In the eyes of high-grade abyssals, the worth of low-level abyssals like Iron Claw demons was inferior to a single finger of a cyclops. Lin Ming walked into the restaurant. It was very spacious, but there weren't many abyssals drinking wine. The truth was that this wasn't a restaurant in an ordinary sense. Rather, it was a place used for abyssals to exchange information. Here, as long as one possessed demon crystals, then they could trade them for information. Lin Ming casually chose a spot to sit down and then placed a black crystal on the table. This black crystal was a demon crystal. Abyssal demons could swallow these demon crystals and use the demon power contained within to increase their own cultivation. Thus, these demon crystals were considered the currency of the entire Dark Abyss. They came in differing qualities. The demon crystals Lin Ming possessed came from the several Iron Claw demons that he had killed earlier. Whether in quality or quantity, they were extremely limited. "What do you wish for?" A sweet sound wafted in the air. A succubus demon that resembled a human woman appeared in front of Lin Ming. She had bent over at an extremely low degree. One could clearly see her chest heaving up and down above her narrow corset. Succubus demons were an extremely strange species of abyssal demon. They looked similar to the intelligent life forms in the 33 heavens and possessed beautiful facial features. In fact, they were even more beautiful than the intelligent life forms of the 33 heavens. The succubus had a hot and bombastic figure. Her skin was bronze, like the color of wheat, making her seem wild and unbridled. Male succubus demons were called incubus. Incubus were tall and had sharp facial features, as if they were cast from marble. If there was one way in which they differed from the intelligent life forms of the 33 heavens, then that would be that there was a slender and long demon tail that extended down their backs. These tails were smooth and slender, only the thickness of a finger. But there was a strange fleshy bulge at the end. Sometimes they were shaped like arrowheads, some were ribbed tubes, and some were rounded points. Some succubus demons also had a pair of small horns coming out of their heads. This didn't destroy their aesthetic appearance. Rather, it made them seem even more cute and lovable. Lin Ming casually looked at this succubus and said, "Anything is fine." The young succubus smiled before leaving. As she walked away, she tossed Lin Ming an especially sweet smile. This was clearly special treatment brought about by Lin Ming's royal bloodline. It had to be known that devouring someone with a royal bloodline wasn't the only way to obtain benefits from them. There was also a gentler method, that was, dual cultivation. After a dozen breaths of time, the young succubus brought a deep red drink to Lin Ming that had the faint aroma of wine. This sort of wine was brewed with blood. "Please enjoy yourself." The young succubus carried a tray with both hands and using her long and slender tail, she wrapped it around the wineglass and placed it in front of Lin Ming. The succubus tail was extremely dexterous, even more so than fingers. Then, the succubus tossed Lin Ming a playful smile, revealing sharp canines from the corners of her mouth. This was also a mark of a succubus. However, her flirtation didn't draw any response from Lin Ming. This caused her to be a little bit angry and she huffed away unhappily. Lin Ming didn't pay attention to the succubus waitress, nor did he move to drink the blood wine. He only sat in the hall, listening to passing abyssals exchange information. After coming to the Dark Abyss, there were many things he had to do. He had roughly planned out his goals that he had to accomplish there, as well as his plans for the next 100 years. Chapter 2088, Demon Association. The restaurant Lin Ming was in was called Blood Moon Hall. In Demon Snake City, although this restaurant wasn't considered too expensive, it still charged a price of 100 to 200 demon crystals for a meal. It absolutely wasn't an amount that a low-level abyssal could afford. Counting today, Lin Ming had stayed in Blood Moon Hall for 20 days. At the start, some beautiful succubus maids approached Lin Ming with their own thoughts in mind. But after being refused several times, they no longer bothered him. Like this, Lin Ming finally obtained peace and quiet. He knew that these succubus maids were not amateur weaklings. In truth, the reason they flirted and enticed him was because they had thoughts of obtaining his royal bloodline. Every day Lin Ming would come to Blood Moon Hall and order the most ordinary wine. Besides that, he didn't order anything else. There was food, and although the food was also expensive, it didn't arouse any appetite in him. Rather, it even made one feel nauseous to the stomach. What abyssal demons usually ate were live insects, bloody meat, living beasts, parts of ancient race descendants, such as their brains, flesh, bones. Every time Lin Ming saw some abyssals gather together to eat the flesh and blood of ancient race clansmen, he had the sudden urge to wipe every single one of them from existence. Have you heard? The Demon Association is planning to sell 10,000 high-quality slaves. Of these high-quality slaves, 8,000 are young girls especially selected for their beauty. They have angelic appearances and their talent is also good. Moreover, all of them are virgins. They make the best possible living furnaces. As for the 2,000 male slaves, they make decent slave guards. With slave seals planted in them, they will be absolutely loyal. In a corner of the restaurant, several abyssal demons began speaking as they tore away at chunks of blood beast meat. As they spoke, their words slurred together and drops of blood leaked out from the corners of their mouths. The demon association that these abyssals spoke of was one of the 6 totem-level influences in the Dark Abyss. Their leader was Evil. Evil was a super-abyssal on the same level as Famine. After the ancient Great War, Evil had gone missing. Some people said Evil had perished, but there were also some who said Evil was lurking in the darkness. The reason for this was that although Evil went missing, the Demon Association didn't fall apart. Rather, over these years, it developed more and more, growing with each year. Billions of years ago, it was the Demon Association that raised a massive amount of ancient race slaves and then constantly screened out these slaves and bred them. Then, they released them into the open wilderness, turning them into prey that was to be hunted down by abyssals. In addition to that, the Demon Association also controlled over 90% of the ancient race slave business. Whether it was living furnaces, guards, experimental materials, alchemy materials, or anything else, all sorts of slaves could be bought from the Demon Association. The slaves of the Demon Association were far more outstanding than slaves produced by other influences. Over all these years, the Demon Association had accumulated an unknown amount of wealth. The reach of the Demon Association was spread throughout the entire Dark Abyss. Their headquarters were located in the 17th layer of the Abyss, but they also had countless strongholds, both large and small, in the other layers. In order to resist the Demon Association, the ancient race clansmen had stirred up countless revolts in these past billions of years. These were also the slave uprisings that the Abyssals spoke of. The ancient race rebel armies had once killed innumerable Abyssals. But compared to a massive abyssal influence, an uprising of slaves was not worth mentioning at all. These rebel armies were nothing more than tiny splashes in an ocean, soon subsiding. Their only use was to help abyssals in training. This was the sorrow of the ancient races. In the past 1,000 years, a large-scale slave revolt had erupted in the Abyss. The waves of the uprising swept through the Abyss 11th, 12th, 13th, and 14th level. It was on a vast scale. However, this so-called vast scale was only relative to slave uprisings that occurred in the past several tens of millions of years. The truth was that to the Abyssals, these rebel armies could be crushed to death with a single foot, no different from someone stepping on a cockroach or ant, simply unworthy of mentioning. In the face of the slave uprising on the 12th layer, the Bash Serpent continued sleeping. As for the Demon Association, they still continued selling slaves. None of them placed the rebel army in their eyes. At this time, the sale of 10,000 slaves was considerable business for Demon Snake City. The main reason was that the quality of these slaves was high, and whether it was men or women, they all had cultivations at the Divine Lord realm or above. Lin Ming quietly listened in on this news. Then, he laid down a demon crystal to pay his bill and walked outside. And when Lin Ming stood up, the several abyssals in the corner of Blood Moon Hall glanced at each other and quietly followed him. Lin Ming seemed to not have noticed this. He carried a pot of wine with one hand and drank it while he strolled through the city. Abyssals favored wine brewed with blood and didn't have any interest in spirit wines brewed from heavenly materials. Thus, the level of these spirit wines couldn't be compared to those brewed in the 33 heavens. Lin Ming continued to drink a mouthful at a time as he walked to a remote location outside the city. This was a good place to kill someone and steal away their possessions. The abyssals that followed Lin Ming looked at each other, excitement growing in their eyes. They were long-tailed demons. They had crocodile-like heads and crocodile-like tails. They were inherently cruel and bloodthirsty and loved to rip their prey apart. As soon as they came to Demon Snake City, they had locked onto Lin Ming. To them, Lin Ming's bloodline was extremely tempting. In these past days, Lin Ming had come across many similar events. The world of abyssals originally followed the laws of the jungle where they strong ate the weak. After Lin Ming suppressed his cultivation, he also blatantly walked around in public with his royal bloodline. This was no different from a little child carrying gold bars and walking round the city streets. The further Lin Ming walked, the more desolate and bleak the surroundings became. But the abyssals didn't develop any suspicions at all. Rather, they grew even more excited. At this time, Lin Ming stopped and slowly turned around. The several abyssals feverishly grinned. In their eyes, Lin Ming was a dead man walking. "Brat, be a good little boy and give us your bloodline and we'll let you die in peace." Ha ha ha. The several abyssals laughed, looking at Lin Ming with mockery in their eyes. Lin Ming sighed. "How stupid. Even at the precipice of death you still keep laughing. Haven't you realized by now that I intentionally led you here?" As Lin Ming spoke, the abyssals were stunned. What? They no longer had the time to think. Lin Ming's sharp claws slashed through their throats and blood sprayed out. Pang! 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 Lin Ming punched out his fists. Billions and trillions of threads of demon power surged outwards, directly breaking into the bodies of these abyssals. This was Lin Ming's body-tearing, bone-shattering fist. Then, Lin Ming waved a hand and a black vortex swirled into existence. Swallowing laws. After absorbing the flesh and blood essence of famine and carving the law runes of famine into his body, Lin Ming had inherited its swallowing ability. The truth was that for famine, it was no longer accurate to describe its swallowing ability with laws. Rather, this was a type of talent, a talent that turned another's strength into one's own. Now, what Lin Ming displayed was this sort of talent. The abyssals he just killed were mostly at the Holy Lord realm, and the strongest of them was at the peak Holy Lord realm. The strength of these abyssals was also drawn out by Lin Ming, turned into the purest strength where it converged within him and nourished his demon body. Now, Lin Ming was still training this swallowing ability. He couldn't be as freakish as famine and swallow the strength of others without leaking out any bit at all. Lin Ming could swallow at most 70 to 80% of another's strength. And as the other party's cultivation got higher, there was a proportionally smaller amount of strength that Lin Ming could absorb. However, this was still several times faster than Lin Ming's previous cultivation speed. A low absorption ratio didn't matter, he would simply need to kill more abyssals in exchange. The abyssal demons were mortal enemies with the intelligent life forms of the 33 heavens to begin with, and Lin Ming showed no mercy in slaughtering them. For the last 20-some days, as Lin Ming practiced famine swallowing talent, he was able to swallow an increasingly high level of strength. Lin Ming felt he could now attempt hunting down World King level abyssals, and after several more months, he could even pursue Empyrean level abyssals. At that time, Lin Ming's cultivation speed would rise to even greater heights. Thinking of this, Lin Ming coldly sneered. Demon Association, this seemed to be a decent target. After a period of thought, Lin Ming waved his hand and gathered the souls of the abyssals. By now, he didn't even need to summon the magic cube. With another wave of his hand, he directly erased the spirit marks of these souls and then used a short period of time to read through their memories. For these last 20-some days, every time Lin Ming killed an abyssal, he would read their memories. His understanding of the Demon Association became increasingly profound. Know oneself, know your enemy, and be undefeated in 100 battles. Since he had placed this demon association as one of his targets, he naturally had to seek out all the information he could on them. Chapter 2089, Ancient Race Uprising. Time passed. By this day, Lin Ming had been in the Dark Abyss for 2 months already. The Dark Abyss's 12th layer, Black Sand City. This was a giant city situated in the midst of a desert. The reason this city had such a name was because the desert was formed from black sand. The desert was naturally desolate, but the city itself was bustling with business. The reason for this was that the Demon Association had established their 12th layer branch division here. Thus, this city had turned into the largest slave market in the 12th layer. The slave trade was an extremely important business in the Dark Abyss. The slaves here were not only ancient race slaves, but also abyssals. Low-intelligence abyssals, such as the Cyclopes, were often turned into slaves in the Dark Abyss. These slaves were all sold in the same way. The Demon Association only sold high-quality slaves. Slaves with poor talent and low strength didn't have much value at all. These types of slaves were placed in the open wilderness and hunted down as prey. For instance, when it came to the ancient race slaves, the Demon Association would often raise and cultivate them so that they reached the divine transformation realm and above. Not just that, but many of them had certain special bloodlines. To the abyssals, these ancient race bloodlines were highly beneficial. These purchased slaves might be used as living furnaces or even food. There were some species of abyssal demons that only came in the male sex. These abyssals would forcefully inject their reproductive life liquid into women of other races. Then, this liquid would invade the eggs of these alien women and slowly transform their bloodlines. Slowly, these eggs would suck up the life essence of the women until a new abyssal was born. This was an extremely tyrannical and cruel method of reproduction. Because of these reasons, female slaves always sold for prices several times that of male slaves in Black Sand City. Black Sand City didn't have city walls. Rather, it was covered by a massive force field. At this time, over 1,000 miles away from Black Sand City, Lin Ming stood at the summit of a high mountain and looked down upon the city. From this distance, the giant Black Sand City was only the size of his palm. This city was Lin Ming's first all-out battle target he had decided on after entering the Dark Abyss. For these last 2 months in the Dark Abyss, Lin Ming hadn't taken any drastic actions that stood out. He only constantly gathered information to further his understanding of the Dark Abyss. He wanted to understand the level of the powerhouses, the scale of the large influences, their positions, bases, and all sorts of other key information. Besides the Demon Association that Lin Ming had made his goal, he also had a relatively good understanding of the other totem-level influences. And he also knew that the most mysterious demon god's tomb was in the lowest layer of the Dark Abyss, the 18th layer. As for secrets related to the demon god's tomb, Lin Ming hadn't been able to find out much. In these past 2 months, Lin Ming had quietly hunted down over 100 abyssals. From starting with Holy Lord level abyssals, then World King level abyssals, he then started on Great World King level abyssals. After killing these abyssals, Lin Ming would swallow up their strength. As the days passed, he became increasingly proficient in the swallowing laws, and the energy wheel formed from the power of divinity and demons within his body continued to expand. Currently, the power of divinity and demons had turned into the foundational energy of Lin Ming's cultivation methods. If he strengthened his power of divinity and demons, it would help him make breakthroughs in his cultivation. Originally, Lin Ming should have reached the peak of the Middle Empyrean realm in 50 years. But now he was taking great steps towards shattering the wall of the Upper Empyrean realm. If he wanted to truly cross this bridge, he would still need a massive amount of energy. And to use the swallowing laws to absorb the strength of abyssals was undoubtedly the best shortcut. Lin Ming recalled the information he had silently collected about Empyrean-level abyssals in these past days. This information seemed common and unremarkable, but it helped Lin Ming avoid crucial mistakes. Otherwise, if he were to bump into a middle true divinity abyssal, then he would be in danger. According to the information he had, there were a total of 5 Empyrean-level abyssals in Black Sand City. Even within the Dark Abyss, Empyrean-level abyssals couldn't be found everywhere. They were generally elders of large influences with prominent statuses. They often lived in important locations of their large influences and were surrounded by solemn guards and layers of traps. If an Empyrean-level abyssal was killed, it would naturally cause a stir in the surrounding region. Lin Ming didn't want to prematurely expose himself. He planned to quietly cut down an Empyrean-level abyssal, and this Black Sand City that was far from Demon Snake City was the best choice. If he recklessly slaughtered in Black Sand City, then it was unlikely he would alarm the Bash Serpent. The Bash Serpent was the master of Demon Snake City and mostly wouldn't bother with matters related to the Demon Association. The City Lord of Black Sand City was an elder of the Demon Association. If his strength was judged by human standards, then he would be somewhere between an Empyrean and true divinity. This also made him the strongest powerhouse in Black Sand City. Moreover, there was also a peak Empyrean and 2 middle Empyrean abyssals in Black Sand City. Lin Ming was very much looking forwards to killing these abyssals and swallowing their strength to see how much they could benefit him. Lin Ming waited for night to fall. The night with its howling black winds was the best time to murder others and destroy their corpses. Lin Ming waited for another 2 hours. Then, his thoughts stirred. 1,000 miles away, he suddenly saw infernal energy shoot into the skies. He squinted his eyes. At the end of the black desert, faint sparks of rainbow-hued light shot into the heavens. It was clear that some people were fighting there. Lin Ming muttered to himself. He extended his sense in a straight line, probing outwards. With his current sense, he could easily investigate something that was occurring 1,000 miles away. And what he saw left him startled. These were clearly ancient race martial artists battling against a group of abyssal demons. And these ancient race martial artists all had a yellow square scarf tied to their arms. The scarves were embroidered with a hexagonal ice flower pattern. These ancient race martial artists didn't have poor cultivation methods and combat skills. Moreover, they worked in tandem to utilize battle formations. It was clear from a glance that these were ancient race clansmen with a high degree of intelligence and not prey that was bred to be released into the wild. Rebel Army. Lin Ming was surprised. The yellow square scarves on their hands reminded him of the recent slave uprisings that had enveloped the 11th through 14th layers of the Dark Abyss. This was a revolt on a vast scale. Although the Bash Serpent turned a blind eye to them and the Demon Association continued with their business as always, the truth was that in these past years this revolt had killed many abyssals and rescued a tremendous number of slaves. These slaves joined the rebel army and the cycle continued. Because the rebel army always tied yellow scarves around their arms, the abyssals termed them the Yellow Scarf Bandits. The truth was that even in Lin Ming's eyes, this ancient race rebel army wouldn't be able to cause any great waves. Sooner or later they would be wiped out by the abyssals. The difference in strength was just too great. However, as Lin Ming witnessed the different combat methods and styles used by the rebel army, and as he saw their battle formations, he suddenly had a strange feeling in his mind. Although he wasn't too optimistic about this uprising, he couldn't help but admit that this rebel army wasn't as weak as he thought they were. At the very least, they wouldn't collapse upon a single strike. Perhaps they had unearthed some ancient ruins, otherwise they shouldn't have possessed cultivation methods of this level. As Lin Ming was thinking this, he saw several lights rise up from Black Sand City and rapidly fly towards the location where battle had broken out. It was clear that these were reinforcements from Black Sand City. The battlefield was so close to Black Sand City that it would be strange if there was no reaction instead. Once the reinforcements joined the battle, then in a normal situation the rebel army forces would be eliminated in a mere half-incense stick of time. Lin Ming naturally wouldn't see these people in danger and stand idly by. His figure flickered and he rapidly flew towards the battlefield. 1,000 miles away, the ancient race rebel army had fallen into a bitter battle. They were originally an outstanding squad of the rebel army, and as they were carrying out a secret mission they were discovered by troops of the Demon Association. A battle was inevitable. The rebel army squad had occupied the advantage to begin with, but the more enemy reinforcements arrived, the weaker they became. Ah! An ancient race green-clothed girl cried out in pain. She was struck flying backwards. The sword in her hand was knocked away, making several turns in the air before stabbing into a rock. Letting go of one's weapon in this environment was monumentally dangerous. Moreover, with the severe wound she suffered just then, the green-clothed girl had lost nearly all her combat strength. Thousand Shade. The eyes of several other youths turned blood-red with anger and worry. However, they didn't even have time to take care of themselves, much less save someone else. The green-clothed girl cried out in pain once more. Her complexion paled and she shivered all over. Her arm that had held a sword suddenly started to age at a speed visible to the eyes. It withered away as the blood vitality was rapidly drained from it. This feeling was like the decaying of a mortal body over 1,000 years being compressed into several breaths. Instead, it was grisly and terrifying. Cut it off! A middle-aged man shouted, burning with worry. This young girl called Thousand Shade was one of the extremely talented individuals in the rebel army. She had great future potential and her bloodline was also outstanding. If anything happened to her, it would be a great loss to the rebel army. The green-clothed girl grit her teeth. She grabbed another sword and chopped down. The arm that was wrapped in a scarf tumbled away. Although she seemed young and delicate, the truth was that she was an incomparably decisive and resolute person. Her fresh blood had already dyed the hexagonal flower-patterned scarf red. The decaying stopped. This scene even surprised the surrounding abyssal demons. Not to mention a woman, even if a brave warrior were to chop off their arm, they would furrow their eyebrows. But this girl called Thousand Shade didn't even hesitate and had done so cleanly and neatly. Hee, you're ruthless indeed, but too bad for you that still won't change your ending. All of you are done for. You might as well be good little slaves and let us capture you and plant slave seals in you. Perhaps some of you might be able to be sold for a high price, ha! An abyssal cackled. And at this time, the sound of sonic booms broke through the air behind him. This was the sound of powerhouses flying, the sound of reinforcement troops from Black Sand City. The abyssal sneered, reinforcements have arrived. You're dead now. Chapter 2090, Unexpected Discovery. The area where the ancient race rebel army was fighting with the abyssal demons was a mere 700 to 800 miles from Black Sand City. To a high-level abyssal, space teleportation wasn't even needed to rapidly catch up in a short period of time. And it was impossible for Black Sand City to not notice the loud ruckus created by the battle between the ancient race rebel army and the abyssal troops. Thus, the ancient race rebel army was already doomed from the start. If they couldn't disentangle themselves from these abyssals as soon as possible, then all they could do was sit around and wait for them to kill them. At this time, the abyssal reinforcements had already arrived. To the rebel army, this was the same as the arrival of hell. Aoo! The abyssal leading the reinforcements roared out loud. He was a lizard demon, possessing the head of a lizard and the wings of a bat that jutted out from his back. He came to a steady stop in the air. Seeing this lizard demon, the middle-aged man in the rebel army squad paled. Black Sand City Royal Guard Forces Army Major. This lizard demon was the commander of Black Sand City City Guard. He had brought his personal guard here and they were all elites amongst elites. This meant that Black Sand City's Demon Association branch division had finally attached some level of importance to the ancient race uprising. But this was also the same as announcing the death penalty to the rebel army. All of the surviving rebels immediately felt despair grow in their hearts. My comrades, let us burn our blood essence together. Even if we must die here, we will still bite off a chunk of their flesh. The middle-aged man leading the rebel army squad clenched his jaws as he spoke. The squad would rather die in battle than fall into the hands of the Demon Association, that would be a fate worse than death. He. Your intelligence network is quite good, you even recognize me. Capture them alive. The lizard demon issued an order. The minions behind him grasped tridents and flew forwards. As for the rebels, they had already planned to burn their blood essence. Even the severely wounded Thousand Shade who had cut off her own arm had grabbed tightly onto her wound, her one face filled with decisiveness. And the moment that they strengthened their determination to die here, a terrifying pressure suddenly descended upon them. This pressure arrived too suddenly, so sudden that they didn't even have time to figure out what happened. All they saw was a light black fog proliferate in all directions, covering all. Every abyssal demon that was covered in this fog was completely frozen, unable to move at all. They appeared to be experiencing agonizing pain. Their faces were twisted in suffering and their expressions were that of panic and fear, like the most terrifying thing in the world was occurring to them. Even so, none of them were able to make even the tiniest sound. Then, with loud popping sounds, all of the abyssals suddenly exploded into bloody fog beneath this pressure. The rebel army squad was utterly shocked. They simply didn't know what happened, nor did they see anyone appear. All they saw was these abyssal demons dying an excruciatingly painful and bewildering death. This is a force field. The middle-aged head rebel shouted. This black fog was likely the force field of some powerhouse. However, to suppress and kill so many abyssals with a force field, including even the Black Sand City Royal Guard Force's army major, this was simply far too terrifying a power. Is it Big Boss? A youth asked. To the ancient race rebel army, their big boss was their god, an omnipotent being capable of anything. No. I've seen Big Boss's force field before and it is completely different from this. The middle-aged man quickly said with a sound transmission. The person who used this force field hadn't appeared in front of them and it seemed as if they had no intentions of coming into contact either. And at this time, a vortex suddenly appeared in the air. All of the blood fog from the abyssals was lifted into the air by this vortex and the demon power contained within it was separated, all of it absorbed into the vortex without a trace left behind. Then, flames ignited beneath the vortex. The abyssal flesh and blood that had lost its essence was charred into ashes by these flames, leaving behind only spatial rings that were also sucked into the black vortex. This vortex was naturally Lin Ming's laws of swallowing. To Lin Ming, the treasures within these spatial rings were highly valuable. For instance, demon crystals that were the currency of the Dark Abyss could be used in numerous places. After absorbing this strength, Lin Ming felt his own powers increasingly by a tiny bit. But there was still a vast distance to go until he truly stepped into the upper Empyrean realm. In order to complete this final step, he would need to kill and eat up a true divinity-level abyssal. Seeing all of these things occur in the air, the ancient race rebels were stunned silly. Just who was this person? Not only had this person casually killed all these abyssals, but they had also saved them. This behavior seemed like something that only ancient race martial artists would do. But, besides their big boss and the small number of elites who inherited the lineages of ancient ruins, just who else could possess such ability? The several ancient race rebels glanced at each other in dismay, unsure of what to say. This mysterious person wasn't any of the ancient race powerhouses they were aware of. At this time, a beam of light shot out towards the middle-aged rebel's hands. The middle-aged man's heart tightened for a moment, but he could immediately tell that this was not an energy attack but an object wrapped in energy. The middle-aged man looked down and saw a pill bottle in his hand. Opening the cap, several pills tumbled out that emitted a rich medicinal fragrance. For a time, the middle-aged man was stunned. These pills were obviously refined using rare heavenly materials. Although he didn't know what their exact effects were, just from smelling them the middle-aged man could feel his injured blood vitality slowly stirring. These were clearly precious recovery pills. Just the smell was so effective. If they ate them, even someone near death would rise up from the ground. the style of these pills absolutely wasn't that of the Abyssals. Abyssals wouldn't use such elegant jade bottles, nor would they refine such crystal clear pills. The middle-aged man immediately understood that these pills were passed down to his squad to help heal the several most heavily injured people. He said, "Thank you, Senior," and then threw one pill towards Thousand Shade. "Hurry and eat this." Thousand Shade was stunned. Then, from the air, a gravelly voice filled with indifference echoed out. This voice seemed to come from all directions, making it impossible to fathom just where the source was. "Your severed arm hasn't completely decayed. Grind one of the pills, smear it on the wounds, and reattach it. Eat another pill and you shall recover." Hearing this voice, Thousand Shade was at a loss for words. She never imagined that the arm she chopped off and which also had all its blood vitality sucked out by an abyssal would actually still have a chance of being restored. She had survived disaster and even her arm could be recovered. She was immediately overjoyed by this turn of events. However, the master of this indifferent voice seemed to have no intentions of appearing. "Thank you, Senior, for this great graciousness." Thousand Smile bit her lips as she spoke. "All of you had best leave. Black Sand City will soon find out what occurred here, and after a little while there will be more people arriving. At that time, they will be even stronger abyssals." Lin Ming passed down these final words and then intended to leave. He had already shown all the benevolence that he could. It was impossible for him to lead these rebels away. Currently, he still had the appearance of an abyssal, and if he were to appear it would inevitably cause a misunderstanding. As for restoring his original appearance to see him, this was too troublesome. However, the middle-aged rebel didn't immediately issue an order to depart. His eyes turned as all sorts of thoughts crossed his mind. Then, he seemed to make a final decision as he spoke into the void. "Could Senior show yourself to us?" Lin Ming faintly frowned. His attitude had been made clear and he had said all he needed to say. He didn't want to waste time speaking nonsense. But, the middle-aged man didn't give up. He continued to say, "I know that Senior doesn't wish publicly reveal your appearance, but this Junior truly has something important to say. I dare ask Senior to appear for a talk." The middle-aged man's words caused Lin Ming's thoughts to stir. His step slowed for a moment. Then, the middle-aged man seemed compelled to say something else. In a very low voice he said, "It concerns secrets of the demon god's tomb." The middle-aged man wasn't able to determine where Lin Ming was and only sent out a general sound transmission. But, he believed that with this mysterious person's cultivation they could definitely catch it. This decision to win Lin Ming had been well thought out. Although he didn't know exactly who Lin Ming was, he could tell from Lin Ming's fighting methods and the pills he took out that it was likely he was part of the ancient races. If this mysterious person was an abyssal, then their pills would be blood pills filled with a thick demonic energy. These pills were refined from the flesh and blood of valuable precious beasts, and the refining techniques were extremely different. The middle-aged man even believed that within the entire Dark Abyss, there might not be anyone capable of refining these high-quality recovery pills in his hands. This caused the middle-aged man to believe that this mysterious person must have some extraordinary status. If he could win over this mysterious person and this mysterious person truly did empathize with their rebel army, then they would be greatly helpful to their future plans. And indeed, when the middle-aged man spoke the words "secrets of the demon god's tomb," the mysterious person didn't leave. This left the middle-aged man overjoyed. "You know of the demon god's tomb?" Lin Ming was surprised. Originally, he thought that with the current state of the ancient races, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to call the current slave resistance a ragtag team of nobodies. If so, then it would have been impossible for them to know anything concerning this level of matter. But he was wrong once again. Demon God's Tomb, the black book that Lin Ming obtained from Shishan's hands, was one of the ceremonial rites books of the Demon God's Tomb. Thus, Lin Ming had a great interest in the Demon God's Tomb. Lin Ming pondered for a moment. He reached out a hand and the black primordious heavenly palace flew out from his body, spinning and growing. "Come in." This is not a place for us to be speaking of such matters. The middle-aged rebel followed Lin Ming's words without hesitation. With a wave of his hand he led the ancient race rebels into Primordius' heavenly palace. Their lives had been saved by Lin Ming, so what else was there to fear? As for Lin Ming saving them, one possibility was that this was an act played out by a high-level abyssal in order to infiltrate the ranks of their rebel army. But they didn't worry about this, as they naturally had methods to confirm this mysterious person's status. After the rebel army martial artists entered Primordius' heavenly palace, it rapidly escaped into the void, flying deep into the Black Desert. Chapter 2091, The Mysterious Big Boss. The Black Desert of the Dark Abyss's 12th layer was vast and boundless. Deep in the desert were great tracts of barren land. At this time, beneath the sand dunes, Lin Ming was looking at several dozen ancient race rebels who had clearly overdrawn their blood essence, and was waiting for them to speak. Lin Ming had already unraveled his disguise as an abyssal demon and had taken the appearance of an ordinary man. This appearance would be much easier for the ancient race martial artists to accept. What is the secret of the demon god's tomb? Lin Ming asked with a sound transmission. At this time, all the rebels looked at Lin Ming with awe. Some of them had eyes filled with curiosity. It was hard to imagine that this common-seeming man would possess such terrifying strength. Well, about this, the truth is that I don't understand the contents too clearly. For the specifics, only the big boss will know. The middle-aged man looked at Lin Ming. He wasn't able to determine Lin Ming's identity nor age. It seemed that this person had come from nowhere. Moreover, this person's bloodline seemed like that of the ancient races, but it was also different from the ancient races. Could there really be such a character in the Dark Abyss? Big Boss? Lin Ming thought for a moment. The truth was that deep in Lin Ming's heart, he was also somewhat curious about who this mysterious Big Boss character could be. For them to organize a massive slave uprising and even struggle against the Demon Association for so many years. Senior, if you wish to see our big boss, then I can recommend you. But before that, I will have to take great courage and ask to confirm Senior's status. As the middle-aged man spoke, he took out an inch-long needle. This needle seemed to be made from jade and was quite delicate. Senior should know that certain species of abyssals have appearance-changing techniques. With Senior's strength, then if you really did change your appearance and are playing tricks with us, then it would naturally be impossible for us to see through it. Thus, I must ask Senior to place 1 drop of blood on this needle to confirm your status. As the middle-aged man spoke, the rebel martial artists all raised their guards. One of the main reasons that the rebel army was able to continue on for such a long time was because their big boss had invented a method that was able to recognize the blood of abyssals. This jade needle had an array formation that was personally created by the big boss. If it was stained with an abyssal's blood, then it would turn pure black. But if it touched the blood of the ancient races, then it would turn into a rainbow of colors. And if it was an ancient race clansman that had an abyssal slave seal planted within their body, then even though there would be a foundation of rainbow-hued colors, it would produce the image of a slave seal. If this mysterious person before them was really an abyssal in disguise, then all of them would undoubtedly die here. Even so, they couldn't allow such a dangerous character to enter the secret resistance headquarters. If that occurred, it would be total annihilation of the resistance. Lin Ming fell silent. Then, he made a sharp cut on his finger and dripped out a drop of blood. The jade needle slowly absorbed the blood. Then, color began to shine within the transparent jade needle, causing all the ancient race rebels to become anxious. The middle-aged man held the jade needle in his hands, waiting for the result. He could feel that Lin Ming wasn't exactly like the ancient races, yet he also wasn't able to determine what his identity was. And at this time, the jade needle suddenly lit up with bright colors. The light became increasingly brilliant, flashing with all sorts of gorgeous colors as if a rainbow was soaring through it. For a common ancient race martial artist, having the jade needle turn a few different hues of colors was already good, let alone such a dazzling divine light. In particular, those slaves that had been screened throughout the years by the abyssals, for them, it would be difficult for their blood to have the jade needle change colors. This meant that the mysterious man before them possessed an unimaginable ancient race bloodline. He was absolutely a peak existence amongst the ancient races. Are we finished? Lin Ming waggled his finger and the drop of blood flew back from the jade needle as if it had a mind of its own and sank into his body once more. When Lin Ming had undergone the jade needle examination, he had activated his Azura blood. The Azura Road Master was the highest existence of the primal god race of 10 billion years past. His ancient bloodline was naturally extraordinary. Just a tiny hint could cause the jade needle to bloom with divine light. Yes. Of course. The middle-aged man said with vivid excitement. As he looked at Lin Ming, his eyes contained not just awe but worship. The eyes of the other ancient race rebels were similar to the middle-aged man's. In particular, the eyes of several young girls couldn't become any brighter. The ancient races were a people that greatly valued their bloodline. This was because in the Dark Abyss, their clansmen were at the mercy of the Abyssals and their bloodline worsened with time. They wanted to restore the endless glory of their past, but first they had to maintain the purity of their bloodline. So ancient race martial artists with top bloodlines were particularly rare. Thus, Lin Ming was able to win their respect not just because of his strength, but also his bloodline. Then, let's go. Lin Ming summoned Primordius' Heavenly Palace once more. The ancient race martial artists entered the Heavenly Palace and flew straight towards the rebel army headquarters. With the guidance of the middle-aged man, Primordius' Heavenly Palace shifted through the void several times before finally arriving above a vast sea. This sea was called the Void Sea, and it passed through the boundaries of the 12th layer and into the boundless void. The ends of the sea were covered in chaotic space and time, and it was impossible to find where they were. Primordius' Heavenly Palace sank into the sea, racing forwards 100 miles before entering a hidden underwater space crack. After entering the space crack, the world widened before them. This was an independent world whose entrance was hidden in the sea. The world was similar to the ancient Phoenix clan's Phoenix Cry Palace in the past, but the scale of it was far, far larger. Besides the middle-aged man, the other martial artists were excited to arrive here. To the ancient race rebels, this independent world was their ultimate holy land. Senior, please follow me. I have already informed the Big Boss about Senior, and Big Boss is awaiting your presence. Lin Ming nodded and flew outside Primordius' Heavenly Palace. As he swept his eyes over this independent world, he was secretly surprised by what he saw. This world had all sorts of ancient and profound array formations scattered throughout. With these concealing array formations, the entrance to this world had become extremely well hidden. In fact, it was even better than the concealing array formations that humanity had arranged in the wild universe in the past to hide from the saints. Lin Ming believed that not even characters like Emperor Sakya possessed such skill. He became even more curious as to who this Big Boss was. In truth, the moment that Lin Ming stepped out of Primordius' Heavenly Palace, he had already faintly felt the aura of another powerhouse in this world. This aura was simply far too conspicuous when placed amongst the auras of the other martial artists. It was only due to courtesy that Lin Ming didn't release his sense to probe this other party. Lin Ming put away Primordius' Heavenly Palace. He planned to follow the middle-aged man to see who this mysterious person was. But suddenly, in a finely crafted jade palace located high above this world, a divine light lit up. The middle-aged man beside Lin Ming was clearly stunned. And Lin Ming was also stunned. At first he was only a little dazed, but as time passed, the surprise and astonishment on his face grew. He stared blankly on as a peerless woman in icy blue clothes flew towards him, bathed in divine light. This woman had an outstanding figure and her thick black hair fluttered behind her. Her skin was as white as snow and seemed to sparkle with frost. From head to toe she exuded a holy and inviolable aura, as if she were an ice lotus blooming atop a snow-capped mountain. She stepped through space, her dress waving behind her. With every step, ripples of space would spread out beneath her toes. Like this she arrived in front of Lin Ming. Lin Ming was frozen where he stood. His eyes stared unblinkingly at this woman. He had seen countless peerless women in his life and naturally wouldn't lose his composure just because of a woman's holy aura. The reason he was so shocked was because he never thought that he would find her here. M.O. Evers now. A single farewell and thousands of years passed. M.O. Evers now was already completely different from her former days. Her aura and majesty had evolved, like an ice phoenix that underwent nirvana, reborn into a greater being. Even Lin Ming didn't recognize her initially. And the change in M.O. Eversnow's strength was even greater. This left Lin Ming incredibly dumbfounded. Lin Ming looked at M.O. Eversnow and M.O. Eversnow looked at Lin Ming. The astonishment on Lin Ming's face fell into her eyes. The truth was that when Lin Ming changed his appearance, he also restrained his aura. In this state, even M.O. Eversnow wouldn't be able to recognize him. But she recognized Primordius' heavenly palace. As soon as Lin Ming appeared in this independent world, she had seen Primordius' heavenly palace. Because of that, she was unable to remain calm and directly flew out from her divine palace. And at this time, the middle-aged man fell onto his knees in worship in the void. He said with dry lips, "Subordinate sees Big Boss." Seeing M.O. Evers now, the middle-aged man was extremely respectful. Perhaps using the word respect wasn't enough to describe what he felt. As he looked at M.O. Evers now, there was reverence and devotion in his eyes, like a faithful follower seeing their goddess in person. The middle-aged man never thought that M.O. Evers now would appear so suddenly to personally greet this mysterious person. This had gone beyond his expectations. He originally thought that with M.O. Eversnow's status, bringing Lin Ming to her was the naturally polite thing to do. Could this mysterious person's status really be so special? As the middle-aged man knelt in the void, it was only then that the other ancient race rebels responded. This was the first time they had ever seen the Big Boss and they didn't know what she looked like. And now that they knew this peerless woman before them was their Big Boss, all of them were clearly excited. They fell to their knees, all of them with the same pious expressions on their faces. And at this time, Lin Ming already didn't know what expression to make. Big Boss. So M.O. Evers now was the Big Boss of the ancient race resistance. To think that this world actually had such a marvelous coincidence. Originally, when he reunited with Xiao Moxian had told him that M.O. Evers now had long since left the wild universe. But he never imagined he would see her here in the dark abyss. Not only that, but her strength had undergone a massive change. She must have experienced some great fortuitous encounter. Chapter 2092, To You, 7,000 Years. Lin Ming. Is it you? M.O. Evers now spoke with a sound transmission, her voice shivering with excitement. 7,000 years ago, after M.O. Evers now and Lin Ming separated, she had thought that Lin Ming had died. Then, when humanity entered the wild universe, M.O. Evers now actually left by herself to seek out her own lucky chances. She never thought that when her hopes of Lin Ming's survival neared despair, she would actually reunite with him in the dark abyss under such circumstances. Because of Lin Ming's appearance-changing technique, it was hard for her to determine his true identity. The reason she asked this question came from purely her own intuition and also because of Primordius' heavenly palace. Senior apprentice sister, it is me. Lin Ming replied, his emotions wildly surging. As he replied, he had already restored his original voice. Then M.O. Eversnow's heart quaked and tears began to flash in the corners of her eyes. And at this time, beside Lin Ming, the other rebel army squad members could see that the relationship between Lin Ming and their Big Boss was definitely not ordinary. Could they be siblings? Or perhaps, lovers? The middle-aged man felt it a bit awkward for their group to be poking their way into the scene, but at the same time he didn't know how to excuse himself. He waited until M.O. Evers now waved her hand and said, "You may withdraw." Like this, they were pardoned and began to leave. You have all done a great merit this time. After a while go to Benevolence Pavilion and receive your rewards. Each person is granted 1,000 contribution points. M.O. Eversnow casually said. As the rebel army squad members heard this, they were stunned at first and then immediately overjoyed. They quickly showed their thanks for this graciousness and then flew towards a towering building. This was the Benevolence Pavilion that M.O. Eversnow spoke of. Lin Ning watched this from the side. It was only a small matter, but he could tell from the squad members' heartfelt joy that these 1,000 contribution points were something they valued a great deal. This also meant that the rebel army had taken these contribution points as the foundation for a complete reward system. For M.O. Eversnow to establish such a system and spread it out, and even have everyone happily agree to it and maintain it, one could see that she was extremely intelligent in her methods. The truth was that setting up a complete reward and punishment system wasn't difficult, nor establishing a secret headquarters or even managing the resistance and obtaining their support. But, to do everything to perfection in the most minute detail, this wasn't something that the average person could accomplish. This required someone with great skill in organizing and leadership. Not just that, but this required formidable strength as the foundation. There was only one word to describe such a person: the Big Boss. In the past, within the divine realm, M.O. Eversnow had been the saintess of the Verdant Feather Holy Lands. Although she lost to Tian Mingzi in battle, this was because he was far too sly and cunning. Moreover, whether it was in age or cultivation, Tian Mingzi had far outstripped M.O. Eversnow. Now M.O. Eversnow had fused with the body of Heavenly Empress Xianqing and obtained a new life. Her strength had rapidly risen, and imperceptibly she had established a large influence in the dark abyss that far surpassed the Verdant Feather Holy Lands of the past. Lin Ming remembered the yellow scarves that the rebels wore on their arms. These yellow scarves were embroidered with a 6-petal flower, and now he realized that this was in truth the symbol of a snowflake, an image that represented the snow in M.O. Eversnow's name. Lin Ming, let us speak more in my divine palace, M.O. Eversnow said. She grabbed hold of Lin Ming's hand and the two of them flickered, instantly crossing through the horizon and arriving in a divine palace of white jade. As Lin Ming entered this divine palace, he was able to feel how amazing it was. It was even beyond Primordius' heavenly palace. And it had to be known that after the ancient Elysium seal was fused into Primordius' heavenly palace, its grade had become infinitely close to a true divinity spirit treasure. A true divinity level spirit treasure palace was a rare sight. This divine palace, Lin Ming couldn't help but ask in wonder. It's something I obtained from the primeval realm ruins. In these past years, I explored the ancient world as well as many secrets of the soul world. M.O. Eversnow sighed as she spoke. In these past 7,000 years, she had experienced far too many things. Senior apprentice sister, how could your strength have advanced so rapidly? Lin Ming felt that M.O. Eversnow had a peak Empyrean cultivation, and she wasn't even a common peak Empyrean. In truth, from a peak Empyrean to a true divinity, there was a large expanse that divided them. And even amongst peak Empyreans there could be a great disparity in strength. If one had to further divide these boundaries, then one could describe the most outstanding peak Empyreans as invincible amongst the Empyrean realm or even a half-step true divinity. Lin Ming felt that the present M.O. Eversnow was in such a situation. Her current strength far outstripped the vast majority of peak Empyreans. M.O. Eversnow said, "It is because of Heavenly Empress Xuanqing's bloodline that I was able to take some shortcuts in my cultivation. In the past, when Heavenly Empress Xianqing died, she was already a peak Empyrean. Moreover, before Empyrean Primordius escaped into the dark abyss, he left a considerable amount of his strength and bloodline with her. Several thousand years ago, when I entered the primeval realm ruins, I sought out the land of inheritance for an ancient peerless god king. At the time, many other martial artists entered, and after a period of slaughter I was able to obtain the greatest lucky chance there. The reason I was able to obtain this lucky chance was because of Heavenly Empress Xuanqing's primal god bloodline. The primal god bloodline was able to resonate with the blood contract left behind by that ancient god king. Otherwise, I wouldn't necessarily be able to stand here today. At that time when I joined in the treasure hunt, my strength was only in the middle to upper echelons of those that entered. Mo Evers now casually spoke these words, but Lin Ming knew that in such lucky chance mystic realms, even with the advantage of her primal god bloodline, she must have passed through countless dangers. In order to survive and be the ultimate final winner of a mystic realm, one needed strength, intelligence, and the courage to use both. Mo Evers now continued to say, after obtaining the lucky chance from that land of inheritance, I spent a full several thousand years in seclusion. Within that land was a space and time enchantment where the flow of time inside was 5 times faster than outside. Inside 20,000 years was outside 4,000 years. Moreover, the laws inside weren't twisted, so I could cultivate within. I used this time to completely fuse together my mortal body and soul, first slowly restoring myself to the peak strength that Heavenly Empress Xinqing once possessed. Then, I used the remaining 20,000 years to finish studying the various array formations and cultivation method inheritances, allowing my strength to go further. Once I left seclusion, my strength had already surpassed Heavenly Empress Xinqing by a great deal. Originally, Heavenly Empress Xinqing was the greatest talent that the primal god race had seen for hundreds of millions of years. When she was at her peak strength, she wasn't necessarily any weaker than the current Emperor Sakya. As for Mo Evers now, her background wasn't poor either. While her soul slumbered in the magic cube for over 50,000 years, during the slow process of recovery she was also infused with the aura of the magic cube. Although she didn't reach the boundary of an eternal soul, her divine soul had many indescribably special characteristics that were out of the ordinary. Afterwards, when she fused with Heavenly Empress Xuanqing's mortal body, she underwent a nearly perfect fusion because of Heavenly Empress Xuanqing's willingness. Mo Evers now used 20,000 years and the lucky chances she obtained through desperately risking her life to restore and even surpass Heavenly Empress Xuanqing's peak strength. This was also a reasonable matter. What happened afterwards? Lin Ming asked. After I gained enough strength, I passed through the Eternal Wall and entered the Dark Abyss. My original plan was to only explore the secrets of the abyssals. I didn't plan to truly come down here. After all, my mortal body is that of the primal god race and it is far too glaring in the abyss. Afterwards, I discovered that numerous ancient race clansmen lived in the Dark Abyss. If I messed within them, I wouldn't arouse any interest. With the ancient races being constantly enslaved over the years by the abyssals, they had lost their way and were on the road to destruction. I didn't want to see this occur because the primal god race has shown me great grace. The ancient god king's inheritance that Mo Evers now found, and even Heavenly Empress Xinqing herself, both came from the primal god race, the strongest of the ancient races. The primal god race had shown great graciousness to Mo Evers now, and now with the ancient races facing such a fate, how could Mo Evers now just stand idly by? Mo Evers now said, I decided to do something about it. I used several hundred years of time to slowly establish my net of influence in the Dark Abyss and then form the ancient god religion. This religion in actuality worships the glory of the ancient races from 10 billion years past. The gods of the ancient god religion include the Azura Roadmaster and the other powerhouses of the primal god race. After my efforts came to fruition, I launched the ancient god uprising. I created a holy land and divine kingdom. The array formations here were all arranged by me, and these array formations originated from the inheritances that I obtained. I set up a system of punishments and rewards, using the numerous treasures and cultivation methods I obtained from the land of inheritance as the rewards. I tried my best to inspire my subordinates to try their best to obtain merits, and at the same time I used all methods at my disposal to prevent abyssal spies from infiltrating our ranks. The scale of the ancient god uprising has grown larger and larger, and the Demon Association can no longer turn a blind eye to us. Rather, they have even started to mobilize elders to encircle us. I suspect that the Demon Association has used clues to slowly grasp information about me, and now with the Demon Association sending a surge of troops to Black Sand City, I suspect that soon there will even be a true divinity-level elder that appears. As Mo Evers now finished speaking, Lin Ming was also worried. The Demon Association was a colossal force, and the high-level abyssals possessed unfathomable strength. If Mo Eversnow's influence were to be compared with them, there simply wasn't anything to say. However, for Mo Eversnow to accomplish all of this was already worthy of praise. To use glory and belief to stir up the hearts of the ancient race martial artists and then give them a boost with rewards. Like this, how could the ancient race clansmen not risk everything to fight for their futures? Mo Eversnow had also invested all of her possessions into this ancient god uprising in order to repay the primal god race for their graciousness as well as to perform a good deed for the entire 33 heavens. True divinity level elder. Lin Ning rubbed his chin. With his current strength, it wouldn't be too difficult to defeat a lower true divinity. But, to kill one wasn't easy. But luckily for them, they still had time. Mo Eversnow had hidden her depths and the Demon Association had seriously underestimated the strength of the resistance. That's right, senior apprentice sister, where has Fishy gone? When I spoke with Sienner, she said that you brought Fishy with you. In the past, when Lin Ming met Fishy at Immemorial Imperial City, he had bought her from the slave auction and also placed her in the magic cube. She spent most of her time together with Mo Eversnow and the two of them shared deep sentiments with each other. This was also the reason that Mo Eversnow brought Fishy away with her when she left. However, upon mentioning Fishy, a dismal light actually crossed Mo Eversnow's eyes. With a bit of worry she said, "Fishy," she suddenly disappeared. Chapter 2093, Abyssal Ritual. She disappeared? Lin Ming was puzzled. How did Fishy suddenly go missing? Mo Eversnow shook her head. I have no idea where she went. When I passed through the Eternal Wall, she was still with me. But, the instant I was in the Eternal Wall, she seemed to be swept away by a spatial vortex and vanished. For all these years I've been looking for her, but I haven't found any news. Sorrow and guilt weighed down Mo Eversnow's shoulders. She felt that she didn't take good care of Fishy. Spatial vortex, Lin Ming frowned. Fishy was an energy form and in truth she could attach herself to Mo Eversnow. But even in such a situation she was swept away by a turbulent space flow, and yet Mo Eversnow had remained fine. Something seemed unusual about this. Just what had happened? Seeing Mo Eversnow's sad expression, Lin Ming comforted her. Senior apprentice sister, you might not know this, but Fishy is originally a life form produced from the purple card. If she was swept away by a spatial vortex, then that might not necessarily mean something bad happened to her. It might even be a lucky chance, or perhaps she was even summoned by something. Lin Ming couldn't think of a reason, thus he could only remain optimistic. Now, no one knew whether or not Fishy was in the abyss. And even if she was in the abyss, wanting to look for her was no different from looking for a needle in the sea. And in fact, if Fishy was taken away as she passed through the Eternal Wall, she might not have even entered the abyss. Purple card. Hearing Lin Ming mention the most mysterious of the three divine tools, a thoughtful light appeared in Mo Eversnow's eyes. If it had been the purple card that summoned Fishy, that would be the best possible result. But, where was the purple card? Could it be in the demon god's tomb? Mo Eversnow muttered to herself. The demon god's tomb, located in the 18th layer of the dark abyss, hid far too many secrets. What is in the demon god's tomb? The middle-aged man I spoke to convinced me to come here with secrets of the demon god's tomb. It's lucky he had some sudden inspiration to mention this, otherwise we might have never met. Lin Ming attached great importance to the demon god's tomb. It seemed to be the most mystical and most important location in the dark abyss. I don't have a complete understanding of the demon god's tomb. In my years in the dark abyss, I have killed some high-level abyssals and obtained their abyssal records for myself. I studied the abyssal language by myself and was just barely able to understand it. It seems that the most powerful strength of the dark abyss is hidden within the demon god's tomb. In truth, it is also the birthplace of totem-level abyssals, the same place famine, deep, and evil, and those other super-abyssals come from. Birthplace of totem-level abyssals? Lin Ming asked, his mind shaking. This rank of abyssal was far too terrifying. At their peak strength, they were existences only inferior to the Azura Roadmaster. There were no life forms in the 33 heavens capable of contending with them. The only thing worth celebrating was that 10 billion years ago, the Azura Roadmaster and Immortal Sovereign had joined forces to fight these totem-level abyssals. Several of them had either died, been severely wounded, or gone missing. But from what Mo Evers now said, it seems that the demon god's tomb could give birth to new totem-level abyssal demons. Lin Ming felt ill at ease. If this were true and new totem-level abyssals were to appear, then the 33 heavens were in danger. Do totem-level abyssals have parents? How are they born? Concerning secrets of the demon god's tomb, Lin Ming was unable to obtain any from Famine's soul. Those memories had been sealed away to an incredible degree. If a superabyssal and another superabyssal joined together and produced an inherently superabyssal, then that would be horrifying. They aren't. Mo Evers now said, shaking her head. Totem-level abyssals weren't born. Rather, when an abyssal with a top true divinity level strength accepts the energy of the demon god's tomb to enter their bodies, they are promoted to a higher realm. After this promotion is completed, this new abyssal can slowly cultivate to activate the energy within their body. This entire process is called the abyssal ritual. But, the burden it places on the body is far too great. There is an extremely high demand on the life potential and strength of the abyssal who accepts this ritual. If their body cannot withstand this energy, then they will directly turn to ashes. Moreover, there is a condition in order to begin the abyssal ritual, and that is that one requires mysterious ritual rites, a token required to open the demon god's tomb. This is also the key to activate the abyssal ritual. As Mo Evers now spoke, a strange color flashed over Lin Ming's face. What is it? The ritual rites you spoke of is likely this, right? Lin Ming traced his spatial ring and a mysterious black book appeared in his hand. This black book was wrapped in grand mist energy and seemed as if it had a life of its own. It pulsated, as if a heart was sealed within. And this wisp of grand mist energy suppressed these life fluctuations. Originally, Lin Ming had to rely on the ancient Elysium seal to accomplish this, but after reaching a true divinity level strength he was able to use his grand mist energy to do the same. Seeing this black book, Mo Evers now was immensely shocked. In some texts she had seen descriptions and records concerning the ritual rites. They were supposed to be written in a black book, and that black book was similar to the one Lin Ming was holding. This, where did you get it from? I obtained it from the hands of a saint race genius, and where he found it from was the primeval realm ruins. Lin Ming casually stated. Mo Evers now was stunned speechless upon hearing this. So something like that happened. There are a total of 6 of these black ceremonial books, each one corresponding to one of the 6 great totem-level abyssals. Only when a totem-level abyssal dies will the corresponding black book appear. Every time the demon god's tomb is opened and the black book is used, and if the abyssal that withstands the ritual successfully passes the test, then the black book will vanish and no longer appear. On the other hand, if the abyssal that undergoes the ritual fails, then they will disintegrate to ashes and the black book will disappear into the void, appearing in some far-off and unknown place. Sometimes, the black book will even leave the dark abyss. Countless abyssals desire to obtain a black ritual tome, and many high-level abyssals will use all methods they have to search for one. However, to look for one cannot even be described as searching for a needle in an ocean. Thus there is a saying that an abyssal who obtains a black ritual tome is favored by the demon god and is also an inborn demon envoy. A demon envoy has an extremely high status in the dark abyss, because they have been favored by the demon god and also because their chances of passing the test and becoming a totem-level abyssal are the highest. I never imagined that this black ritual tome in your hand would actually have been obtained by a saint genius. What a cruel joke. The intelligent beings of the 33 heavens have actually received the favor of the demon god. Mo Evers now shook her head, clearly showing contempt towards these abyssal legends. But Lin Ming hesitated for a moment, as if he were mulling over something. What are you thinking about? Mo Evers now asked. I was just thinking on what to do with this ritual rites tome. Lin Ming rubbed his chin, opening the cover of the Black Book. The first sentence of the Black Book's title page was, "The tomb is the end, and also the beginning." Then, what was written was, "The one who possesses this book is the embodiment of Ian." Ian was the name of a totem-level abyssal. No matter which abyssal managed to withstand the baptism of the abyssal ritual, that demon would become Ian. And when Ian died, only then would this Black Book appear. What to do with the Black Ritual Rites tome? Mo Evers now furrowed her eyebrows. It doesn't seem as if it can be destroyed. The safest method would be to hide it in some place where no abyssal can find it so that the dark abyss will forever be missing a totem-level abyssal. Or, we can come up with a plan to use the Black Book to set up a trap and draw in high-level abyssals and then kill them. But, this is extremely risky. It would need to be planned in great detail, otherwise, it would be the same as giving treasures to the abyssals. For a time, all sorts of thoughts raced through Mo Eversnow's mind. However, Lin Ming shook his head. Senior apprentice sister, what I was thinking of just now was to do something else, and it might even sound a bit crazy. Mo Evers now was startled. Senior apprentice sister, please look at this first. As Lin Ming spoke, he roared from the bottom of his lungs. His voice became bass and low, sandy and loud, as if peals of thunder echoed out in the skies. His entire body emitted explosive crackling sounds as he grew taller and his muscles bulged out. Fierce plates of bone armor and scales appeared on the surface of his skin and bone spikes jutted out from his knees and elbows. In just an incense stick of time, Lin Ming had become an abyssal demon. Mo Evers now was utterly bewildered. How did you do this? She knew that Lin Ming's body transformation technique had reached an extremely high boundary, and one could use the body transformation to change the structure of their body. But to turn into an abyssal like Lin Ming did now was far too exaggerated. Moreover, she could feel the aura of an abyssal exuding from Lin Ming's body, and it was impossible to fake this sort of aura. I cannot even recognize you. If she hadn't stared blankly on as Lin Ming completed this transformation in front of her, then she wouldn't have recognized that the abyssal in front of her was a disguised human. Moreover, it would have been impossible for her to recognize Lin Ming. This camouflage was far too perfect. Well, this is a long story. Senior apprentice sister, I have the power of demon in my body. What I was thinking of just now was whether or not it would be possible for me to withstand the abyssal ritual. Lin Ming's words left Mo Evers now panic-stricken. A human to withstand the abyssal ritual? This was too crazy. This is too dangerous. You simply don't know what will occur when you withstand the abyssal ritual. Even high-level abyssals can die when they withstand the abyssal ritual. And with your current strength. In truth, Mo Evers now didn't know what the limits of Lin Ming's strength were. But, she shouldn't be wrong that Lin Ming's cultivation was at the Middle Empyrean realm. Even if she considered that Lin Ming possessed heaven-defying potential, he still couldn't be more formidable than a true divinity-level abyssal, right? Also, even if you managed to survive the abyssal ritual, this abyssal ritual is originally prepared for abyssal demons. If you withstand the ritual, will you even still be you? Mo Evers now spoke her worries. Lin Ming said, my soul is protected by the magic cube, so there shouldn't be a problem. Moreover, I also plan to open the 7th Dao Palace, the Twofold Dao Palace. Like this, it will be much safer for me. Chapter 2094, Twofold Dao Palace. Twofold Dao Palace, you have already reached the Twofold Dao Palace? Upon hearing that Lin Ming planned to open the Twofold Dao Palace in the near future, Mo Evers now was startled. She never imagined that Lin Ming's cultivation speed of the 9 stars of the Dao Palace would be so fast. The 9 stars of the Dao Palace, 7 bright and 2 dark. As the 7th Dao Palace of the 9 stars of the Dao Palace, the Twofold Dao Palace was the last of the 7 bright Dao Palaces and also the most unusual Dao Palace. Its unusualness was embodied in its position. Every Tao Palace had a specific position in a martial artist's body. For instance, the Davikai Tao Palace was in between the eyebrows, the martial sovereign Tao Palace was in the forelimbs, the purple temple Tao Palace was in the dantian, and so forth. As for the twofold Tao Palace, it had a particularly unique position. It was located outside a cultivator's body. After the twofold Tao Palace opened, it would condense into a star that appeared in the void not too far away from a martial artist. This star was named the twofold star. Then, the laws of the 9 stars of the Tao Palace would use this twofold star as the foundation, gathering infinite starlight and gradually taking the form of a person's phantom. This phantom would be completely similar to a cultivator in appearance. Thus, this was where the name of the twofold Tao Palace came from. As the last of the 7 bright Tao Palaces, the twofold Tao Palace gathered the most strength of the 9 stars, several times that of the previous Tao Palaces. This also meant that the twofold Tao Palace was the mightiest of the 7 bright Tao Palaces. When this starlight phantom first appears, it would have 50% of the true body's combat strength. After that, as long as the cultivator poured in a part of his source blood vitality and source soul, concentrating it into this twofold star, then it would be able to have a flesh and blood avatar. This avatar was named the twofold avatar. The more blood essence the twofold avatar received, the more powerful it would become. In addition, with the starlight of the highest heavens that the twofold Tao Palace gathered, it would eventually become an extremely powerful weapon. Of course, because the cultivator branched out a part of their blood vitality, they would suffer some damage to their strength. But the degree to which they were injured would be far less than that increased strength brought about by the avatar. In the martial world, there were numerous techniques that allowed one to control avatars. For instance, the Asura Heavenly Tao had its own cultivation and fighting methods involving avatars. However, in these cultivation methods, the avatar formed was usually refined. For instance, the Asura Heavenly Tao's 3 avatars. The Essence Spirit Embryo Stone, Soul Springs Divine Embryo, these were divine stones naturally bred through the world and didn't originate from Lin Ming himself. If Lin Ming were to lose his avatars, although it would decrease his strength, it wouldn't cause any true damage to his body. But, the twofold Tao Palace was different. The avatar of the twofold Tao Palace was created by a martial artist taking out a portion of his blood essence and casting it in starlight of the high heavens, transforming it into true flesh and blood. One couldn't afford to lose such an avatar. Moreover, this avatar came from the same origins as the main body. It could separate from the main body and also fuse with the main body. Once the avatar and main body merged together, it would cause one's strength to erupt, doubling over. This sort of ability was not something that a refined avatar could possess. In normal situations, after a martial artist opened the twofold Tao Palace, the main body and avatar were mostly fused together. With this, one could display the greatest strength. It was only in cultivation that they would separate. Like this, absorbing heaven and earth origin energy would be that much faster. Lin Ming fervently wished to open the twofold Tao Palace now, because after he opened it he could use its special characteristics to separate the power of divinity and demons in his body. Lin Ming's twofold Tao Palace had a large difference from that of others who cultivated the 9 stars of the Tao Palace. Generally speaking, once a martial artist opened their twofold Tao Palace and separated out their avatar, this avatar would be no different from their main body. If the avatar and main body were separated, this would make one's fighting techniques more flexible and their cultivation speed faster. If the avatar and main body were fused together, then this would be the same as superimposing their strength together. But Lin Ming was different. He planned to use the twofold Tao Palace as the foundation, and after condensing the Starlight Phantom he would then pour all of the demon power in his body into this avatar, turning his twofold avatar into a complete demon avatar. As for his true self, he would leave behind the power of divinity and the corresponding bloodlines. By doing this, Lin Ming would have a more flexible identity in the future. He could fuse with his avatar whenever he wished and also separate whenever he needed to. As for this abyssal twofold avatar, it would be able to recklessly use the swallowing laws to swallow the power of demons while his main body absorbed the power of the world, allowing his cultivation to rise faster and faster. If so, then Lin Ming wouldn't need to worry that using such an evil and unorthodox cultivation method like the swallowing laws to rapidly increase his cultivation would make his foundation unsteady, nor would it cause a backlash. After opening the twofold Dao Palace and entering the demon god's tomb, he could even use his avatar to transform into the shape of an abyssal and undergo the abyssal ritual. Like this, there shouldn't be a problem. Lin Ming spoke his ideas to Mo Eversnow. As Mo Eversnow heard this, she was stunned for a long time. You want to form a demon avatar? Mo Eversnow felt this was all too inconceivable. How could Lin Ming have approached the 7th Dao Palace so quickly, and where did he obtain Famine's essence from? It should be possible. This avatar is myself and not something I seized. As long as I branch out a wisp of my source soul into my avatar, then it will be a second me. This is just what have you gone through these past years? Mo Eversnow had long been wanting to ask this, but she didn't have a chance since there were so many matters to discuss. It should have been impossible for life forms of the 33 heavens to seize the body of an abyssal. If Lin Ming were to form a demon avatar in the future, this would be an unbelievable event. Lin Ming told everything he experienced in the last 7,000 years to Mo Eversnow without holding anything back. He described being chased down by Soaring Feather, his own source soul force being taken by Shang Mei, his tribulations in the lower realms, his 7 reincarnations, his arrival in the wild universe, his absorbing of Famine's soul and controlling Famine's avatar, his overcoming 2 god kings and making them withdraw from the war between humanity and the saints. Towards Mo Eversnow, Lin Ming had no need or desire to conceal anything. She already knew about the secret of the magic cube, so what else was there left to hide? After listening to Lin Ming's experiences, Mo Eversnow fell silent for some time. For these past years, Lin Ming's experiences were simply far too bizarre. From the verge of death, to the abyss of despair, to standing up tall once more, to entering the wild universe and turning the tides, to becoming a leader of humanity and being titled the human sovereign, it wouldn't even be enough to describe Lin Ming's life as one that experienced simple ups and downs. She thought that with all the lucky chances and life or death slaughters she encountered in the primeval realm ruins, her life had been considerably adventurous. But when compared to what Lin Ming had experienced, it seemed quite bland instead. So the reason you went missing in the past was because of Shang Mei. Mo Eversnow was at a loss for words. She just couldn't understand why Shang Mei did what she did. You said that Shang Mei has a great enmity with the Soul Emperor, and after she took away your strength she still left behind a wisp of her source soul in your body, and even sealed her primordialine and grand reincarnation art into it? But what is the meaning behind doing all of this? In that sort of situation, the chances of you overcoming the odds to rise once more were nearly zero. Shang Mei didn't know you had the magic cube either, so why would she think you could restore your strength? Lin Ming sighed and shook his head. I am not sure either. Her methods at the time were probably the only choice she could make after she joined the Soul Emperor and found herself powerless to do anything. At that time, I truly would have died, but Shang Mei relied on the faintest glimmer of her intuition to leave behind one last hope for me, as well as one last hope for her. Shang Mei was a woman no different from a puzzle. Thinking of her, Lin Ming once more recalled the mysterious peerless woman who had appeared in the cold ice mirror and whose remains were left behind in the center of the eternal wall. To surpass a river of time that flowed for 10 billion years, Shang Mei and that mysterious woman were no different from a martial artist and their twofold avatar. Just how could they be related? Shang Mei and the Soul Emperor's fate, all that she did to him, everything left Lin Ming with extremely complicated feelings towards Shang Mei. She was neither good nor evil. She seemed to have seen the limitless scenery of the world, and also seemed to be shouldering a pitiful and sorrowful story. However, no matter what her life experiences were, no matter what it was she wanted, Lin Ming knew that 7,000 years ago, when he was being hunted down by Soaring Feather God King without hope of escaping, when he was also being eyed by the Soul Emperor on another side, it was Shang Mei who had saved him. This graciousness was not one that Lin Ming would forget, even if Shang Mei's methods had been filled with riddles. The feeling she emitted was like a pearl shrouded in the darkest fog. 10 billion years ago a flower falls, and 10 billion years later a flower opens. To overcome the samsara of 10,000 lives, unaffected by karma, fated for life and death. Chapter 2095, Change. Black Sands City possessed the largest slave trade in the 12th layer of the abyss. After the ancient god uprising erupted, not only was its business not affected, but it became increasingly busy. For several months, every month, there would be at least 20,000 slaves transported to Black Sands City. On this day, there were already at least 200,000 slaves gathered at Black Sands City. These slaves were all high-quality goods that were carefully selected. Many of them were shipped out from the Demon Association in the 16th and even 17th layer of the abyss. In order to train better slaves, the Demon Association would allow some ancient race slaves to cultivate to the Holy Lord realm. But, to fully control these slaves, the Demon Association gave them incomplete cultivation methods that would only allow them to reach the Holy Lord realm. In addition, with the slave seals planted in their spiritual seas and the special training and enslavement process, this meant that the chances of these slaves escaping their control was near zero. Of course, they could still have their free will restored if they were rescued and had their slave seals undone by a high-level master. A Holy Lord-level slave could sell for a sky-high price. As for a World King-level slave, those were nearly non-existent. If they existed, they were also specially raised by high-level abyssals for their own enjoyment. Beneath the 9 suns burning in the sky, the Black Sand Desert seemed as if it would ignite. The reason the sand here was black was because there was dark steel in it. Underneath the heated sun, the dark steel could easily burn a person's foot. If a vicious bird egg was buried in the sand, it would only take an incense stick of time to cook it. However, to some mounts, this burning hot sand wasn't anything at all. Bang! A green monster's foot came smashing down like a pillar, leaving a foot-deep footprint in the burning hot sand. This was a cyclops and also a variation cyclops. It was larger than an ordinary cyclops as well as stronger and faster. Of course, its price was over 10 times that of an ordinary cyclops. An ordinary cyclops was already considered a luxury commodity. This variation cyclops was not something that the average person could hope to ride. And at this time, the one riding this cyclops was Lin Ming. He had taken the appearance of an abyssal. A year had already passed since Lin Ming entered the Dark Abyss. For this year, Lin Ming spent most of his time in the Black Sand Desert with the ancient race rebel army. The rebel army and the Demon Association collided several times, and Lin Ming took the shape of a human to quietly kill over 1,000 abyssals. This even included a Middle Empyrean abyssal that guarded Black Sand City. When Lin Ming killed these abyssals, they simply collapsed upon the first strike, thus, they weren't able to temper his fighting skills at all. However, he was able to further practice his swallowing laws. The power of demons in every abyssal was absorbed by Lin Ming. Slowly, he became increasingly proficient in his swallowing laws, soon achieving almost the highest boundary he could reach. Lin Ming had now made all of his preparations. After absorbing so much energy, he could attack the late Empyrean realm as well as open the twofold Dao Palace. And the direct result of Lin Ming striking down an Empyrean of Black Sand City was that the Demon Association wasn't able to sit idly by any further. They never imagined that the ancient god religion and the resistance would be so difficult to deal with. Not only did the rebel army repeatedly outmaneuver their armies, but they even killed an Empyrean. This simply defied all common sense. Now, the ancient god resistance had become a thorn in their eye that they had to pull out. Soon the Demon Association would take action. A month ago, the ancient race rebel army intercepted a force of abyssal enforcers that were escorting ancient race slaves. After killing these abyssals, the ancient race rebel army rescued 5,000 ancient race slaves. These 5,000 slaves had extremely high levels of talent and their cultivations were also very good. Following the usual procedure, they would then join the ancient race resistance and become another force for the rebel army. However, the result left their hearts aching. When Lin Ming tried to lift their slave seals, all of these people suddenly died at the same time. Lin Ming could only stare helplessly on as these 5,000 ancient race youths died as blood gushed out from their heads. Some of them even exploded into a bloody fog. Even though Lin Ming had experienced endless life or death slaughter in his life, and even though he had killed countless enemies in his time, seeing such a scene still left him dispirited. Lin Ming didn't need to investigate anything to know that the Demon Association had tampered with the slaves' slave seals, making it so that any movement would cause all of them to die. This was to prevent the Ancient Race Rebel Army rescuing the slaves, and this would also prevent the Ancient Race Rebel Army growing in strength. The tactics of the Demon Association were similar to the kamikaze tactics used by mortal nations in war, to kill 1,000 enemies by sacrificing 800. In this way, it would be useless for the Ancient Race Rebel Army to rescue the slaves. This was equal to accelerating their death. The Demon Association's methods caused the ancient race martial artists to be filled with anger. However, there was nothing they could do. Currently, they had no ability to frontally engage the Demon Association. They could only use guerrilla tactics to fight them, but now, even this tactic had been denied by the Demon Association, thus they had become idle. They couldn't fight in Black Sand City, and yet wandering in the wild wasn't meaningful either. For a time, the ancient god rebel army's morale hit a low point. But at this time, more shocking changes occur. The Demon Association sent a black-robed elder to Black Sand City. The highest authorities in the Demon Association were the black-robed elders. Every black-robed elder was a true divinity-level abyssal. Even in the dark abyss, true divinities weren't cabbage found everywhere. They only existed in top influences and were also the highest authorities in these influences. The Demon Association never imagined that there would be a day where they would have to send out a black-robed elder to suppress a slave uprising. However, now that the slave rebel army had managed to stir a black-robed elder to action, this also meant that their game had come to an end. This was because a true divinity-level abyssal's divine sense was far too powerful. A black-robed elder would surely be able to find the hideout of the rebel army using his sense, and that would be the apocalypse of the ancient god uprising. The only reason the Demon Association tolerated the ancient race rebel army at the beginning was because the true divinities couldn't be bothered with such little matters. But, once they moved in earnest, extinguishing a rebel army wouldn't be any more difficult than slaughtering a dog. The arrival of the Demon Association's black-robed elder left the ancient race rebel army flustered in a panic. It was obvious that it wouldn't be long before the Demon Association would lay siege to them. Ultimately, the ancient god rebel army was only a ragtag gathering of freed slaves. They didn't have any system of cultivation methods or military training, and although they were willing to sacrifice themselves to restore the past glory of their people, their total fighting strength wasn't too formidable. For a time, the various squad leaders of the rebel army gathered together. They frequently came to seek an audience with Mo Evers now, or they met together to secretly discuss how to deal with the Demon Association. Many people thought of evacuating the 12th layer of the abyss and fleeing to the 11th layer. But, this wouldn't be much safer because a true divinity-level powerhouse of the Demon Association would be much faster than they were. Moreover, if they chose to evacuate, that would make it even easier for them to be discovered and suffer total destruction. Even so, towards all the rebel army squad leaders who desired an audience, Mo Evers now rejected them without exception. She passed down a single order, that was to stand by and wait for further notice. Such an order left the squad leaders weak at heart. But because of Mo Eversnow's authority, they had no choice but to obey her. In this situation, whether it was the rebel army squad leaders or high-level figures of the Demon Association, no one knew that before the black-robed elder arrived, Lin Ming had already quietly descended upon Black Sand City. Lin Ming knew that the chance he waited for had come. This would be his opportunity to open the twofold Dao Palace and for him to reach another turning point in furthering his strength. Bang! Bang! The variation Cyclops weighed over 100,000 genes. With every step it took in the vast desert, it would stir up waves of sand. Dark steel chains hung heavy on its arms, dragging against the sand, blurred in the high desert heat. This variation Cyclops had been bought by the demon crystals that Lin Ming obtained after killing the Empyrean that guarded Black Sand City. This would have been a luxury mount to ordinary abyssals, but to Lin Ming it wasn't much at all. At this time, Black Sand City loomed before Lin Ming. Chapter 2096, Ancient Race Slaves. As Lin Ming rode the variation Cyclops into the city, he could see the city guards eye him with awe and envy in their eyes. In the dark abyss, wealth was proportional to strength. Only powerful abyssals had the right to be wealthy. Otherwise, even if one came from a great family, they still wouldn't obtain any wealth. To abyssals, they were incredibly indifferent to family-kin relationships. High-level abyssals would never favor their own descendants. For this past year, although Lin Ming had been annoying the Demon Association from the back, this was the first time he truly came to Black Sand City. Black Sand City was an extremely busy and lively city. In terms of population density, it was much greater than Demon Snake City. Black Sand City's streets were broad and spacious. Lin Ming could recklessly ride his variation Cyclops into the street. And other abyssals would politely allow Lin Ming to pass through without complaint. In this world where strength was revered above all, someone that could ride a variation Cyclops must possess formidable strength. Along the way, Lin Ming could see numerous succubus women casting flirtatious looks at him along the street. These were prostitutes of Black Sand City. In this debased and wealthy city, prostitutes were born following a desire for money. This was an occupation that had existed since time immemorial and easily mixed into any city. Lin Ming didn't pay attention to this. He went to the largest slave trading market in Black Sand City, the one established by the Demon Association. This slave market was like a city within a city. It had high city walls, and the inside of the city walls was completely different. As Lin Ming walked in, he discovered that sealed within these city walls there was an independent dimensional realm. This world was 1,000 miles in radius, and numerous palaces floated through the air, along with opulent jade palaces and celestial mountains that floated amongst the clouds. It was hard to believe that such a scene was a slave market of the dark abyss. In fact, this place seemed like an Empyrean holy lord established by the life forms of the 33 heavens. "Sir, what type of slaves are you wishing to purchase?" After Lin Ming appeared, a pretty succubus demon welcomed him. Her voice was delightful and captivating, and she spoke in the higher abyssal language. It was clear that Lin Ming possessed a royal bloodline, and his mount proved how wealthy he was. This made the succubus demon even more attentive towards him. "Bring me to take a look." As Lin Ming spoke, he had already flown into the skies. As for the succubus woman, she followed with a bright smile, introducing Lin Ming to the area along the way. In the skies, far off in the distance, Lin Ming could see a tall platform high in the air with a slave woman being sold. She was locked in a cage, and although she was a slave, she had been carefully dressed up. One couldn't sense any lowly and debased feeling from her at all. Many female slaves wore luxurious dresses, their temperament as faint and ethereal as smoke, as if they were the saintesses of large sections. There were also young girl slaves that were miserable and pathetic, capable of arousing the sympathy of others. There were female slaves that were 13 to 14 years old too, with little horns coming out from their heads. Although these little girls had low cultivations, their talents were outstanding. However, whether they were noble and holy, these women, or little girls that seemed lovable and innocent, all of them were locked in dark steel cages without a single exception. From afar, the cold bars that surrounded them formed an enormous contrast. The succubus demon proudly said from beside Lin Ming, "Sir, these different types of female slaves aren't just empty appearances. Thanks to our careful cultivation, if these female slaves seem like a saintess, then they have the makings of a saintess. If they are like little girls, they are also gentle and lovable. Their looks are completely consistent with who they are." Lin Ming frowned and didn't speak. He could see that some cages had multiple women within them. Before he could ask anything, the succubus demon said, "The slaves that are enclosed in the same cage are often related to each other. They might be twins, triplets, quadruplets, or also mother and daughter. Listening to the succubus demon's explanation, Lin Ming looked at these women once more and lightly sighed. Some were brimming with youth, some exuded enchanting sex appeal, some seemed noble and lofty, however, their lives were already ruined. At this time, there were numerous abyssal customers all around. The customers chose these women as if they were choosing goods from a stall. Anyone that they chose would have to face their destiny as a slave. Seeing Lin Ming's unhappy expression, the succubus demon thought he wasn't satisfied with the goods. She quickly said, "Sir has no need to worry. This is only the beginning and the truly splendid goods are up ahead. Sir, please come with me. There is a VIP area that the average person cannot enter without at least 1,000,000 demon crystals in wealth. Of course, this isn't a problem for you." The succubus demon laughed. She naturally wouldn't suspect Lin Ming's financial resources. The variation Cyclops was something that not even an ordinary world king could afford to ride. She flew up front and led the way. Lin Ming quietly followed as he probed his surroundings with his sense. In truth, he could easily cover this entire dimensional realm in his sense. Not even the array formations around the VIP area could stop him. He could see a celestial mountain before him high up in the skies. Atop this celestial mountain was an exquisite jade building as well as a garden. Ancient race martial artists were spread throughout the area. Lin Ming flew over a square atop a celestial mountain. He could see 100 ancient race martial artists lined up in the square. There were men and women, and all of them were exceptionally good-looking. These people all wore neat training clothes as they shadowboxed the air. Beneath the blazing sun, these ancient race martial artists wore clothes as white as snow. As they moved in their uniforms, they seemed like white cranes unfurling their wings, beautiful to the eyes. They were slaves, and because they had slave seals planted in their bodies, they no longer possessed free will. The orders they obtained were to happily demonstrate their skills, thus the state of mind they displayed was one of happiness and joy. If Lin Ming didn't meet these people in the dark abyss's Black Sand City, he would think that he had come to an ancient race holy land. Then, Lin Ming flew over a medicinal garden. He could see some women in floral clothes carefully tending to the plants. They were all young and beautiful with outstanding figures and faces as perfect as a flower fairy in full bloom. Another some young girls skipped through the garden trying to catch butterflies, a truly beautiful scene. However, although this was a beautiful scene, Lin Ming merely sighed with emotion as he saw this. This was because the more beautiful these young girls were, the happier they seemed, the easier it was for them to be bought. And the fate that awaited them was truly pitiful. For instance, if an abyssal species that only had males were to purchase one, then that woman would end up being a body for those abyssals to reproduce. Their fates would be to bear the babies of these abyssals, who would eat them alive from their bellies. Lin Ming continued to fly forwards. He saw some young men and women skilled in alchemy or refining techniques working in alchemy rooms and refining forges. He even saw a deep mountain valley, and in this mountain valley were hot springs covered with a thick fog. Water trickled down from these springs, blue and transparent, like the finest crystal. And in this fog, one could see a group of girls wearing only thin gauze, their exposed bodies revealing enchanting scenery as they bathed in the water. Lin Ming never imagined he would see a crowd of beautiful women bathing here. For a time, this left him at a loss for words. In the eyes of intelligent life forms of the 33 heavens, abyssal demons represented the greatest evil, the greatest darkness. But in truth, in the hearts of those that lived in the 33 heavens, hadn't demons always existed to begin with? These naked women shrouded in fog made one wish to commit grave sins and explore their bodies. If the intelligent beings of the 33 heavens were to stand here, they might also be unable to help themselves and would try to purchase these young women. Seeing Lin Ming stop in the valley, the succubus demon revealed a thoughtful smile. She said, "Only those that wish to purchase these female slaves and also pay down a deposit are able to go into the valley below. Otherwise, if these top-grade female slaves are seen by countless abyssals every day, they wouldn't be able to sell for a high price." Lin Ming was silent for a moment. Then, he suddenly said, "The price tags, bring all of them over." Lin Ming's words were simple and to the point. The young succubus demon was overjoyed. She quickly took out a jade slip. All of the slaves' prices were recorded within. As the agent who had received him, she would receive a commission on all slaves that Lin Ming bought. Lin Ming looked through the jade slip. The slaves of Black Sand City were clearly priced, and there was basically no way of haggling with a counteroffer. The only exception was if one wished to purchase en masse. And the reason Lin Ming came this time was for such a mass purchase. If possible, he even wanted to buy up all these slaves. The Demon Association would have planted special slave seals in the bodies of these slaves that could take their lives at any moment. Once Lin Ming attacked the Demon Association branch division, even if he won, these slaves would still all be buried with them. Lin Ming didn't wish to see this occur. Thus, before he caused any truly earth-shaking waves in Black Sand City, he needed to purchase as many slaves as he could and send them away. In this way, he could save even more people. Chapter 2097, The Final Request. What does Sir think? If Sir is satisfied, then you may feel free to take a look. These slaves are all high-quality goods with superior talents, and they have also been trained since childhood in all manners of skills to please and pleasure you. Moreover, all of them are virgins. The succubus demon leaned in close to Lin Ming's ears and blew out her steamy breath. She didn't believe that Lin Ming would be able to resist such temptation. Of course, if he wished to go down and recklessly play with them, then he would need to pay the deposit money and also purchase the slaves too. Lin Ming shook the jade slip in his hands, glancing over the prices. Although he already knew the approximate pricing of these female slaves, seeing the long line of numerals still left him slightly flabbergasted. These slaves were far too expensive. However, Lin Ming was also extremely wealthy. For the last year he had killed hundreds and thousands of abyssals, including even an Empyrean-level abyssal. He was already wealthy to begin with, and when he came to Black Sand City he also brought the numerous demon crystals that Mo Evers now had. In these past years, the ancient god rebel army had accumulated an astronomical level of wealth. The deposit money is here. I will buy them all. Lin Ming took out a spatial ring and flicked it towards the succubus demon. The succubus demon grabbed it and probed it with her sense. She was immediately shocked. Within this spatial ring were piles upon piles of demon crystals. It was simply hard to estimate how many there were. Let alone the dozen-some young girls bathing in the spring below. Even if there were hundreds of them, this money would be more than enough. And from what Lin Ming said just then, this was also only a deposit. Deposit money. This meant that Lin Ming would take out even more wealth and buy even more slaves. Thinking of this, the succubus demon was immediately excited. "Sir, you are far too generous. Would you like to go down now to take a look?" She thought that after Lin Ming bought the young girls in the valley, he would certainly dive into that warm pond and enjoy himself in devouring those beautiful women. But she never imagined that Lin Ming would issue a terse order: "Have those people put on clothes and follow me." Put on clothes. The succubus demon was stunned. The Demon Association branch division had spent a considerable amount of effort to arrange the scene below, and yet this royal abyssal had no intention of doing anything with the young girls. To have such beautiful young girls put on clothes, wasn't that just a waste of goods? Although she was puzzled in her heart, in Black Sand City a customer's requests were everything. The succubus demon could only act accordingly. All of the young girls in the valley were ordered to rise up, dry their bodies, and then put on clothes to follow Lin Ming. Then, Lin Ming went to the high platform he saw before. The slaves here were all enclosed in iron cages. In this giant slave market there were some slaves that showed a positive demeanor. But, there were even more young girls who were only giving performances in the iron cages to attract customers. There was no young girl willing to be held in an iron cage as a commodity to be sold and bought. Like this, whether they were ephemeral saintesses or little girls that seemed to be treasures of families, they were only maintaining their outer appearance beneath the threats of the Demon Association. Lin Ming could actually see their bodies gently shaking. Some girls were pale with beads of tears at the corners of their eyes. They were nervous, but also pitiful. To the Abyssals, the delicate and fragile appearances of these female slaves could arouse the beastly desires in their hearts. There was even the rare kind-hearted Abyssal who would feel a protective desire upon seeing these slaves. Even so, no matter who they were, they would still buy these slaves. Raise your head. Stand at the front of the iron cage for me. As Lin Ming stepped before an iron cage, two identical young girls shrank back into a corner, subconsciously lowering their heads. They didn't dare to look at Lin Ming now because his appearance was simply far too fierce. To these young girls who had just bloomed, it was hard to imagine just what sort of master Lin Ming was and what awaited them. I'm speaking to you too. Are you deaf? Near the iron cage, an iron claw demon raised a whip, and raged at the disrespectful appearance they showed towards Lin Ming. He lashed out his whip and the two young girls panicked upon seeing this. These iron claw demons were extremely skilled in using their whips to cross through the slits of the iron cage and strike the girls' bodies. The strike would hurt, but it wouldn't break their skin, in order to avoid leaving behind scars. The two young girls subconsciously closed their eyes. However, the pain didn't arrive. They opened their eyes and saw that the iron claw demon's whip had been grabbed by a towering abyssal before it fell. Compared to this large abyssal, the iron claw demon seemed as small as a chicken. The iron claw demon smiled apologetically. I apologize for this shameful sight. These little girls only arrived a short time ago and are still a bit wild. Slashing them with a few whips will be enough. Lin Ming looked upon the iron claw demon, revealing a bit of killing intent in his eyes that caused the iron claw demon to shrink away, a cold chill running down his back. You. The iron claw demon gulped, not sure of what to say. He didn't want to offend such a powerhouse. Luckily for him, Lin Ming had already turned his head, giving the iron claw demon a chance to catch his breath. I'll buy them. Lin Ming coldly said to the succubus demon behind him. The succubus demon was overjoyed. As for the two young girls in the cage, they were flustered, unaware of just what fate awaited them. After becoming slaves, they didn't expect any brilliance or glory in their lives, just surviving would be enough. However, although this abyssal before them seemed ferocious, he had still stopped the iron claw demon from striking their bodies. He shouldn't be some cruel pervert, right? As the two young girls were thinking like this, they developed wild hopes of Lin Ming. They left the iron cage and followed behind him. Lin Ming didn't speak. As they walked forwards, every time he saw a young girl in a cage, he would only ask what their price was and then buy them up. Later, Lin Ming didn't ask for their price. When he saw one, he bought one, as the clear prices of these slaves were listed on their cages. Soon, the several hundred young girls from the iron cages had been bought up by Lin Ming. Many of these young girls had pink whip marks marring their skin and their clothes were torn in many places. With their appearance, it was easy to take pity on them. The succubus demon behind Lin Ming was already ecstatic. She didn't know why Lin Ming was in such a haughty mood to buy so many slaves at once. But she didn't have any interest in finding out the reason, as she would earn money all the same. The commission she would earn from this customer today would be the same as what she earned in several years. For all the slaves that Lin Ming bought, he would branch out a part of his soul force to enter their spiritual seas and refine the slave seals there. Like this, these slaves were turned over to Lin Ming for him to control. As for the slave seals, the array formation spells that would cause the slaves to instantly die were also lifted. The Demon Association was a merchant organization that heavily relied on word of mouth. They certainly wouldn't add such spells on goods they sold that would make their customers feel ill. Slave after slave was rescued. Afterwards, Lin Ming didn't even speak. With a wave of his hand, the succubus demon would cheerfully laugh and take away the slaves. The several hundred ancient race slaves that were training on the Celestial Mountain, both men and women, were all bought by Lin Ming. The flowery fairy maidens in the medicinal garden and the common slaves there were also bought by Lin Ming. Following that, from the various halls, residences, pavilions, towers, alchemy rooms, all the male and female slaves that one could see were bought up by Lin Ming. Lin Ming welcomed all without reserve. Sometimes, he didn't even glance at them. Finally he waited in place and all the slaves in the slave market walked towards him, whereupon he received them all. Such a bold approach even alarmed the city lord of Black Sand City. He was a peak Empyrean of the Demon Association. This Demon Association city lord commanded Black Sand City. Now, he came to personally greet Lin Ming. Lin Ming tossed out more and more demon crystals. Soon he started to lack funds. Fortunately for him, by this time almost all the slaves had been bought up by him. He placed them all into Primordius Heavenly Palace. At this time, Primordius Heavenly Palace had its appearance changed by the ancient Elysium seal and it now looked like one of the dark fortresses that Abyssals liked to ride. It was covered all over in cruel and demonic bone spikes. After a purchasing session of nearly 8 hours, the last of the ancient race slaves were sent to Primordius Heavenly Palace by Lin Ming. Primordius Heavenly Palace then flew away. Lin Ming watched as it broke through the void and vanished into space. Slowly, his face turned cold. He had already paid the abyssal crystals. These crystals were held in the hand of the Empyrean level abyssal before him, who was also the city lord of Black Sand City. The Black Sand City lord also had a royal bloodline and he was much taller than Lin Ming. At this time, he was smiling as he looked at Lin Ming. "Sir is truly bold and refreshing. For all the slaves that Sir bought, we have already accounted a 5% discount for you. Next time you can place an order and we can personally prepare your request to create suitable slaves." As the abyssal spoke, he clapped his hands and ordered a banquet to see off Lin Ming. Then, he looked at Lin Ming and said, "I wonder if you have any other requests you would like to make?" Lin Ming looked at the Black Sand City lord with indifference. He slowly said, "I have one more request, and that is that I don't want to pay anything." Lin Ming's tone was casual, as if he were speaking of minor matters. The Black Sand City lord's face stiffened, as if he hadn't clearly heard what Lin Ming just said. "I said that I want you to give me all your demon crystals." Lin Ming spoke, clearly and unhurriedly, his eyes blazing as he stared at the Black Sand City lord. The Black Sand City lord's complexion darkened. But, he still retained a friendly tone. "Are you making a joke here? This joke isn't funny, the slaves have already been taken away by you." "My apologies, but this is not a joke." As Lin Ming spoke, killing intent flashed in his eyes. Chapter 2098, Luring Out the Snake. Lin Ming's killing intent was not concealed. This thick killing intent condensed in the room, as if the entire room was filling with solid metal, freezing all. Feeling Lin Ming's killing intent, the Black Sand City lord was not angry or scared, rather, what he felt was disbelief. Black Sand City was the territory of their demon association. And their demon association was a super influence that had existed in the Dark Abyss for billions of years. It had an unimaginable background and numerous masters, no one dared to play tricks with them. Moreover, in Black Sand City, there was currently a true divinity abyssal standing guard. Yet an abyssal actually dared to stir up a mess in Black Sand City. Did he have a death wish? The Demon Association didn't fear anyone. Although it seemed that Lin Ming's background wasn't simple, the Black Sand City lord didn't even place him in his eyes. "I don't mind if you say that. In my opinion, these ancient race slaves aren't some commodity to be bought and sold by others to begin with, are they just because you think they are? So, I want you to give me back those spatial rings I just gave you a moment ago." Lin Ming ignored the Black Sand City lord's anger and continued to speak in a casual tone, just like a calm lake. But as these words fell into the Black Sand City lord's ears, his killing intent only became that much thicker. "You have no idea of death or danger." The Black Sand City lord gnashed out. The Abyssal Demon's cultivation system was completely different from that of the 33 Heavens. The Black Sand City Lord couldn't completely distinguish Lin Ming's cultivation, but he could approximately feel that Lin Ming's cultivation was lower than his own. A person with a weaker cultivation actually dared to repeatedly push his limits. Was there something wrong with his brain? Although there were many species of low intelligence amongst the Abyssals, such as the Cyclops or Black Armor Demons, it was clear that Royal Abyssals were different. I will give you one final chance to take back the words you just said and immediately get out of Black Sand City. If so, I will pretend nothing occurred just now. And if you don't, then I will have you die here without a grave. The Black Sand City Lord had reached the limit of his patience. If it weren't for Lin Ming's extravagant spending, the astronomical amount of demon crystals he paid to buy up all the ancient race slaves, then he would have already turned Lin Ming into a corpse by now. However, his warning seemed to have no effect at all. Lin Ming silently took out a black spear. This was the Black Dragon Spear. In Lin Ming's abyssal form, the Black Dragon Spear had changed its shape, becoming even fiercer and more deadly. Seeing Lin Ming extract his weapon, the Black Sand City Lord's face turned icy cold. You are seeking death. After saying these 3 words, the Black Sand City Lord attacked. His weapons were his claws. For many Abyssals, their bodies were their best weapons. The sharp and vicious claws grasped towards Lin Ming's throat. During this attack, the Black Sand City Lord used his own laws. Black flames lit up over his claws. These were abyssal flames that could burn down all of existence. Compared to fire attribute cultivation methods of the 33 Heavens, this possessed an even more terrifying might. But the moment the Black Sand City Lord attacked, so did Lin Ming. He revolved the strength within his body to the limit, emulating the abyssal method of fighting. Grasping the Black Dragon Spear, he brought it smashing downwards. A thick spear light directly pressed down upon the Black Sand City Lord, capable of shattering mountains and rivers. Gotcha! The moment Lin Ming fought with the Black Sand City Lord, a horrifying energy vortex tore everything around them into pieces. The immortal palaces of the slave trading market, the platforms, the various buildings, all of them were instantly reduced to ashes. Even many of the Abyssals responsible for overseeing the slaves were sucked up into this energy storm and mercilessly killed. Just how terrifying was a battle between a peak Empyrean and a true divinity-level master? In just a single collision, everything within a scope of 100 miles had been annihilated, and this was even with the protection of array formations. And if it weren't for these protective array formations placed everywhere around the slave market, then this entire dimensional realm would have turned to dust. In the turbulent flow of energy, the Black Sand City Lord was sent flying away. He crashed into a celestial mountain so hard that it brought the mountain tumbling down. His body was broken in countless places and he was buried in a bloody heap of rocks. It was already impossible to find him. What happened? What is going on? Many Abyssals were unsure as to what had occurred. They flew about and saw Lin Ming grasp a black spear, standing atop ruins. It seemed as if mountains and rivers had collapsed in front of him. At this moment, Lin Ming took the Black Dragon Spear and pounded the ground. Bo! With a loud explosive sound, the earth violently trembled. Giant shockwaves swelled outwards like tsunamis. With the Black Dragon Spear as the center, the shockwaves spread in all directions, catching all the Abyssals that were flying in the air. And in front of Lin Ming, the ruins formed from shattered mountains and rivers also split open. The Black Sand City Lord that was buried deep beneath the debris was blown out of the ruins. His body was a bloody mess and his figure was unrecognizable. At this time, Lin Ming stepped forwards. The Black Dragon Spear shot out like an arrow, instantly piercing through the Black Sand City Lord's throat. Puff! Blood shot out. Lin Ming poured energy through the spear into the Black Sand City Lord's meridians, breaking apart his organs. The Black Sand City Lord's eyes bulged out and he stared at Lin Ming with confusion and disbelief. He couldn't believe that Lin Ming was actually this strong. Without a doubt, this was a premeditated attack. All of Lin Ming's actions had only been to kill him. Or, it could be said that Lin Ming already possessed the strength to kill him and was merely toying around with him. Abyssal demons possessed an incomparably powerful life force. Even though the Black Sand City Lord was wounded so heavily, he still hung onto one final breath. Bubbly blood frothed out from his mouth and his lips shook. With cold indifference, Lin Ming reached out a hand and took back all the wealth he had handed the Black Sand City Lord earlier, including even the Black Sand City Lord's own spatial ring. I already said that these things are to be returned to me. As Lin Ming spoke these words, the Black Sand City Lord was so enraged he nearly vomited more blood. The Demon Association will not let you go, you. The Black Sand City Lord's head was lopped off. The world turned upside down and then he stared helplessly on as Lin Ming took away his corpse before leaving the dimensional realm where the slave market was located. This was also the last image he saw. At this time, a loud rumbling sound like thunder echoed throughout the entirety of Black Sand City. This sound contained endless anger. It was like the punishment of the highest heavens, destroying all. Who are you? You killed my Demon Association's city lord. Lin Ming paused his step. He knew who the master of this voice was. It was the black-robed elder sent out by the Demon Association to guard Black Sand City, as well as his true target. That brief fight just now had only lasted a mere spark of time before the Black Sand City Lord was cut down, making it impossible for those Demon Association elder who was in seclusion to help rescue him. Hum. Black clouds began covering all of Black Sand City. The 9 suns high in the sky were already hidden away. Clouds as dark as ink poured out, rolling through the world. Suddenly, light disappeared, and one couldn't even see their own fingers in front of them. Lin Ming knew that this Demon Association True Divinity Elder had released a force field to completely cover Black Sand City. But how could Lin Ming allow himself to be surrounded like this? His figure flashed and he rapidly flew away. Whoosh! Lin Ming was like a meteor cutting through the dark skies. He grasped the black dragon spear, pouring the power of the 9 stars into it. A horrifying strength instantly erupted as he thrust out at the edge of the force field. Chila! The force field tore apart. Lin Ming's body shook as he forcefully broke through this true divinity force field. With Lin Ming's strength, he was already able to defeat ordinary true divinities. Naturally, breaking apart a force field wasn't easy. But in order to accomplish his goal, the moment Lin Ming broke through the force field, he burnt the power of his blood essence. After opening the Gate of Life, Lin Ming burning a little bit of the Gate of Life's blood essence wasn't a problem at all. But as this scene fell into the eyes of others, it seemed as if he were desperately giving it his everything. After breaking out of the force field, Lin Ming launched his full speed and crossed through the horizon like a rainbow, rapidly flying into the depths of the Black Sand Desert. And behind Lin Ming, what followed him was roiling black sand. This black sand formed a giant wave 100 miles high and 1,000 miles wide. At the crown of this sand wave was a massive abyssal claw formed of black sand that came grasping down at Lin Ming. The black-robed elder guarding Black Sand City was using his transcendent methods to attack Lin Ming from afar. These methods seemed grandiose, however, its true might was far inferior to the black-robed true divinity personally being present. As long as Lin Ming wanted to, he could easily destroy this abyssal claw. However, he didn't do so. Rather, he constantly dodged the abyssal claw with swift movements, soaring faster and faster into the Black Sand Desert. Just where do you think you are going? An angry voice suddenly sounded out from Black Sand City. Dark clouds surged forth. This true divinity elder had started to personally chase after Lin Ming. This was the exact effect that Lin Ming wanted. As he was being chased, he had continuously suppressed his strength in order to lower the vigilance of the black-robed true divinity. If Lin Ming revealed a strength that was too great, then the other party would absolutely become cautious. If so, then the black-robed elder might not chase after him. And in Black Sand City, Lin Ming didn't have full faith he could strike down the black-robed elder. Not to mention the numerous defensive array formations in Black Sand City and the countless minions of the Demon Association that would harass him. Just the several transmissions arrays in Black Sand City would mean that other high-level abyssals would arrive as soon as they obtained the news that the black-robed elder was in danger. Thus, what Lin Ming first needed to do was draw the black-robed elder out of Black Sand City. Chapter 2099, Void Sea. Bang! Bang! Black sand formed demon claws that came crashing down again and again. As Lin Ming dodged left and right, he was like a nimble fish swimming through a stormy sea. The sandstorm simply wasn't able to do anything to him. Although Lin Ming was hiding his strength, no one would think he was faking it because his cultivation realm was clearly placed before them. For instance, in the eyes of the Abyssal Elder, Lin Ming's cultivation was somewhere around the middle to late Empyrean realm. With that level of cultivation, being able to kill a peak Empyrean Abyssal in 2 moves and withstand so many strikes from a true divinity was already a miracle in itself. If someone were to say that Lin Ming's strength was even higher than that, the Abyssal Elders simply wouldn't believe it. I have a deep and bitter grudge with Black Cage, and the reason I came to Black Sand City was to kill him and take revenge. Everything I did was perfectly justified. You had best not involve yourself in my matters, otherwise I will remember you chasing after me today, and 100,000 years from now I will surely come to you and seek recompense. Lin Ming's voice was clear and loud, rolling out like a thunderclap. It even passed over Black Sand City, and all the abyssals dwelling within heard him. The Black Cage that Lin Ming spoke of was the Black Sand City Lord he had just killed. He was explaining his reasoning for why he struck him down. And in truth, such an explanation seemed extremely reasonable. This was because a sane abyssal wouldn't suddenly develop some strange fantasy of coming to Black Sand City and striking down the Demon Association's Black Sand City Lord. This action was equal to drawing a death sentence from the Demon Association. There was no abyssal influence that would do something so idiotic without full preparation, because this was the same as declaring war against the Demon Association. But, if there was a powerful loner who had a personal grudge against the Black Sand City Lord and wished to recklessly strike him down without caring for the consequences, then this could be easily explained. This sort of misunderstanding was also what Lin Ming wanted. Now, he didn't want others to know that he possessed the ability to disguise himself as an abyssal, nor did he want anyone to link his actions to the ancient race rebel army. If this was only a simple revenge kill, then all would make sense. But, when Lin Ming explained his reasoning for killing the Black Sand City Lord, the true divinity elder became even more enraged. Not only did this unknown abyssal kill the Black Sand City Lord while he was present, but he also dared to make threats while trying to escape. He had received the highest orders from the Council of Elders to guard Black Sand City and crush the ancient god uprising. Now, before he had suppressed the uprising, the Black Sand City Lord had actually died. Moreover, he had been personally attending Black Sand City at the time. This was simply a stain upon his name. Thus, when Lin Ming spoke those words just then, it only strengthened the true divinity Abyssal Elder's desire to kill him. He wanted to finish this as soon as possible, because taking so much time was also shameful. He unfurled his movement techniques. Roiling black cloud dragged behind him as he struck a claw at Lin Ming. The claw phantom wildly tore open the black sand desert. Millions of genes of black sand instantly melted away, but at this time, Lin Ming actually accelerated one more time, avoiding every new danger. What? The Abyssal Elder was shocked. He thought that his attack would surely be successful. However, his attack actually failed. He could faintly see a faint red glow around Lin Ming. He had clearly burned his blood essence. Each time, Lin Ming would only burn the tiniest bit of blood essence. With him having opened the gate of life, burning this amount of blood essence wouldn't affect him at all. However, others wouldn't know of this. They would only think that Lin Ming had reached his limits. Let's see how long you can last. The Abyssal Elder rapidly flew forwards. But he discovered that Lin Ming was like a cockroach. Although the Elder was faster than Lin Ming and his attacks blotted out the skies and overwhelmed the world, every time he attacked, Lin Ming would escape danger again and again. This feeling was like a cockroach escaping from being crushed by mortals by running through the smallest cracks. Lin Ming's performance left the Abyssal Elder at a loss. The Elder guessed that Lin Ming possessed some sort of special arcane skill that granted him speed and flexibility far surpassing other martial artists of his level. However, the disparity in strength eventually couldn't be overcome. At the very least, this was what it looked like in the Abyssal Elder's eyes. After 5 close escapes, the Abyssal Elder could feel that Lin Ming had weakened a little due to the amount of blood essence he repeatedly burnt. Then, on the 6th attack, his claw phantom finally scratched Lin Ming. Pang! With a loud explosive sound, Lin Ming's protective demon power instantly burst apart. He tumbled away, injured. The Abyssal Elder was overjoyed. This chase had dragged on for such a long time that even he was ashamed. Now, he impatiently wished to capture Lin Ming and re-establish his might. I will remember the shame of today. My strength will surpass you in the future, and once I do I will kill you. Lin Ming shouted out while he suppressed the chaotic blood vitality in his body. This shout caused thick killing intent to flash in the Abyssal Elder's eyes. In truth, he didn't know how old Lin Ming was. But from the skills he displayed, his potential was not small at all. Perhaps with time Lin Ming really could surpass him. And as someone from the Demon Association, everyone knew who he was. If Lin Ming really wished to take revenge in the future, then there would always be a way to stir up trouble against him. Thinking of this, the Abyssal Elder was merciless in his decision. You no longer have a road to flee through, nor will I give you an opportunity to. The Abyssal Elder attacked a 7th time, wanting to bring this game of cat and mouse to an end. But this time, Lin Ming suddenly drew out a piece of an ancient mirror. Then he coughed blood onto this ancient mirror. After it absorbed the blood, it began to shoot out divine light. In the next moment, the ancient mirror completely exploded, turning into a swirl of shadows that ripped open the void. Lin Ming followed the ancient mirror and broke into the void, seeming as if he would activate a great void shift. Seeing this, the Abyssal Elder was stunned. Generally speaking, when martial artists were being chased down, it was impossible for them to carry out a great void shift. This was because if one wished to travel long distances through the void, one needed to carefully calm their heart and summon the power of the space laws to search for the approximate space coordinates. The only exception was if the person being chased had plenty of strength left over, so that it didn't matter if they were distracted while being hunted down. The Abyssal Elder certainly didn't believe Lin Ming possessed such an ability. He recognized that the problem was the ancient mirror Lin Ming had just pulled out. This should be some sort of transmission array disk. After starting the array disk, it would directly transmit the user to an assigned position. Such a transmission array disk wasn't too strange. It was just that super long-distance transmission array disks were few in number while short-distance transmission rates were extremely weak. When Lin Ming was in the South Sea Demon region searching for the Nirvana Dragon Root, Mu Yuhuan had given him an escape symbol excavated from an ancient ruin. That escape symbol was a short-distance transmission array. When Lin Ming was in a critical situation, he had used the escape symbol to send Mu Qianyu away. To a low-level martial artist, such a transmission array was a life-saving escape tool. But to a high-level martial artist, the effects were simply subpar at best. This was because high-level martial artists already possessed the ability to use their sense to lock down a target they were chasing. This was especially true for true divinities. When Lin Ming was locked onto by Soaring Feather, there had simply been no way road to heaven and no gate to hell. The Abyssal Elder slowed down and locked his sense onto Lin Ming's position. Lin Ming's transmission sent him 100 million miles away, past the Black Sand Desert and into the vast and limitless Void Sea. At this moment, the Abyssal Elder hesitated for a moment. His repeated failures in catching Lin Ming left him with a strange feeling percolating in his heart. This could be called a foreboding premonition. However, this feeling only lasted for a brief moment before fading away. It was impossible for him to let go of Lin Ming. After a brief hesitation, he found Lin Ming's coordinates with his sense and then reached out to tear open the void. Looking at the space tunnel before him, a cold light flashed in the Abyssal Elder's eyes. He stepped into the void and rapidly shuttled through, soon appearing 100 million miles away. For a true divinity-level powerhouse, a single great void shift could transport them 100 million miles away. 100 million miles wasn't anything at all for them. The sea tide surged around him. At this time, the Abyssal Elder had already appeared in the vast and endless void sea. This was the target area that Lin Ming had chosen. In his eyes, he could see Lin Ming's form turn into a beam of light and shoot deeper into the void sea. The void sea was the boundary of the abyss's 12th layer. In its depth there were complex spatial terrains and massive tracts of shattered space leading to mysterious and unknown chaotic worlds. It was difficult to determine just which direction one was going in here. Many times, even Empyreans didn't dare to enter this place. If one flew through the void sea, it was easy to lose direction. And once someone was lost, it would be incredibly difficult for anyone to locate them. Thus, many people deliberately avoided this danger zone, because going missing or dying were likely possibilities. "You want to lose me in the void sea?" The Abyssal Elder coldly snorted. He would not allow Lin Ming's hope to come true. Even though this was the void sea, he was still a true divinity-level abyssal, and his ability to discern direction far outstripped Lin Ming. He sensed his surroundings and then reached out a hand to tear open the void once more, undergoing a short-distance space shift. This time, he appeared in front of Lin Ming. But Lin Ming had already been expecting this. The moment the Abyssal Elder appeared, he suddenly changed directions and rapidly ran away. Die! The Abyssal Elder suddenly reached out a fist. In an instant, sea water surged up and solidified as it squeezed towards Lin Ming. Looking at the wildly tumbling waves, Lin Ming's pupils shrank. His strength suddenly erupted and the black dragon spear came slashing outwards, the spear light seeming to connect the heavens and earth. Rumble, rumble, rumble. The mountain-like waves were neatly split in half before blowing apart. Sea water rose up, forming a 100-mile-long column that impacted into the heavens and flushed away all the clouds. The strength Lin Ming erupted with just now left the Abyssal Elder startled. He looked at Lin Ming, his eyes beginning to narrow. Chapter 2100, Stormy Assault. The moment the waves broke, Lin Ming's strength suddenly rose to a new level. Without a doubt, he had been hiding his strength all this time. Just who are you? The Abyssal Elder's face lit up with murderous intent, his appearance becoming more ferocious. He faintly felt that Lin Ming had intentionally lured him here. Above the void sea, one of the greatest characteristics of this place was that time and space were mixed up in a chaotic jumble, and it was hard for the outside world to discover just what was occurring within. This also meant that if there was a fight here, it would be difficult for anyone outside to come to the rescue. Shwa! A great force field came shrouding down, completely covering the surrounding space. It was Lin Ming's grandest space. This force field could easily prevent the Abyssal Elder from activating a great void shift. In fact, beneath Lin Ming's all-out onslaught, even if there was not a force field here, it would basically be impossible for the Abyssal Elder to find a moment of peace to lock onto new space coordinates and traverse the void sea with a great void shift. The Abyssal Elder's complexion darkened as he felt Lin Ming's force field. What influence are you from? Since when have totem-level influences become such sneaky cowards? Are there more Abyssals here? Call them all out. The Abyssal Elder radiated his sense outwards, watching for any possible sneak attack. Although Lin Ming had suddenly erupted with a great strength, he still didn't think that Lin Ming would be the only one here in this trap that was set up for him. The truth was that for the high-level elders of the Demon Association, being encircled and killed was nearly impossible. This was because even in the Dark Abyss there were only several influences capable of cutting down a true divinity-level elder. As for the Demon Association, their relationships with these other influences weren't antagonistic to the degree that these influences would decide to kill a true divinity-level elder. But if it wasn't a trap set by a great influence, it coming from a personal grudge was even more impossible. This abyssal elder had long since killed off almost all his personal enemies. Even if there were a few fish that managed to escape his net, these simply weren't characters that the abyssal elder would bother to remember, much less be capable of encircling and killing him. Thus, true divinity-level abyssals that attached themselves to large influences were nearly without any enemies in the dark abyss. This was also the reason why this abyssal elder chased Lin Ming while throwing caution to the wind. However, exceptions always existed in reality. The abyssal elder began to understand that all the events that occurred in Black Sand City had been targeting him from the start, and the Black Sand City Lord that died was merely a cover for luring him out. However, the abyssal elder didn't think that there wouldn't be anyone rushing out from hiding spots. Instead, it was only Lin Ming who would attack. At this instant, the skies suddenly darkened. 9 sparkling stars appeared high in the air. They rose up from behind Lin Ming, 6 of them radiating infinite divine light as they shined upon his 6 style palaces. Bang! The sea exploded, issuing a savage war song. Lin Ming's spear swept up mountain-like waves as he thrust towards the abyssal elder's throat. This is... The abyssal elder's heart shook. He had an extraordinary level of experience, and he could see that the moves Lin Ming used didn't utilize the laws of abyssals. Rather, this seemed to be the 33 heavenly Daos. An abyssal demon could use the 33 heavenly Daos? Was this even possible? The abyssal elder didn't have any time to further think about this. By now, the black dragon spear had already pierced right in front of him. The shining spear light was like a blazing divine light, blinding to the eyes. The abyssal elder emitted a guttural roar. His joints emitted explosive crackling sounds as he clenched his hand into a fist and punched out. Bang! This fist was like a collapsing world, pressing down upon the black dragon spear. Zzz. The black dragon spear bent like a full moon. A massive wave of energy gushed out, forming a monstrous tsunami that swept over the world. The force of this blow left the abyssal elder flustered. A corner of the scales on his fist had shattered and blood flowed out. Whoosh! The abyssal elder was sent flying backwards like a meteor, his face one of stunned astonishment. Who are you? He thought that Lin Ming was someone who came from another one of the 6 totem-level influences and wanted to harm the Demon Association, but Lin Ming revealing the laws of the 33 heavens left him feeling shocked and fearful. It was nearly impossible for an abyssal to study the 33 heavenly Daos. Compared to a saint cultivating the 9 divine shifts or a human cultivating the saint race's body transformation technique, the difficulty was over 10 times greater. But Lin Ming simply didn't give this abyssal elder any time to think. He rushed out once more, the black dragon spear bravely blazing forwards, thrusting straight towards all the abyssal elder's vital points. Damn it! The abyssal elder was incensed. He slashed out his claws and 10,000 claw lights wove into a giant net of light that split open the skies. Rumble, rumble, rumble. The abyssal elder brutally collided with Lin Ming. As a true divinity-level abyssal, his mortal bodily strength approached that of Astral Vault God King, and his scales granted him a defensive ability no worse. However, Lin Ming's strength was no longer what it was in the past. If he were to fight Astral Vault God King as he was now, he could easily defeat him in direct combat. Bang! In that moment, an Azura War God Phantom appeared behind Lin Ming. The giant myriad demon karmic wheel came smashing down, grinding. Away the abyssal elder's claw lights. Lin Ming took this chance to move forwards. Space lost all meaning beneath his laws. The black dragon spear snuck out like a viper, diagonally sweeping towards the abyssal elder's ribs at a tricky angle. The lower rib was not a vital point on the abyssal elder's body, but it was an extremely deadly attack point. This was because the abyssal elder's defenses were mostly focused on his head, neck, and areas above his lungs and heart. It wasn't easy to attack him under his ribs, but this was also the area where he was most vulnerable to injury. Lin Ming's angle of attack could be called extremely cunning, completely surpassing the Abyssal Elder's expectations. This spear was fast and ruthless, there was no time to dodge. Ka! Protective demon power exploded. Scales were torn open and blood shot out. A foot-long gash opened up on the Abyssal Elder's chest and his body was sent tumbling away. Although the wound wasn't deep, the moment that the Black Dragon Spear tore open the Abyssal Elder, a dark and sinister energy broke into his body, hurtling straight towards the heart and lungs. Just who? The Abyssal Elder was shocked beyond compare. He summoned demon power to forcefully diffuse Lin Ming's energy strike, but as he looked at Lin Ming, his face was still covered in disbelief. This enemy's strength was clearly above his own, and yet his cultivation was clearly only at the Empyrean realm. Lin Ming didn't give his opponent any chance to catch a breath. As his spear thrust out, another Lin Ming flew out from within his body. This Lin Ming wore black clothes. He was Lin Ming's Essence Energy Avatar, the Essence Spirit Embryo Stone. The black-clothed Lin Ming also grasped a spear. The beautiful spear drew a killing circle through the air, the spear point coming down in a deadly arc, the end point being the Abyssal Elder's neck. What? The Abyssal Elder's pupils shrank. Lin Ming's Essence Spirit Embryo Stone Avatar had no ability to turn into the form of an abyssal, thus it retained Lin Ming's original appearance, that of a human from the 33 heavens. Before this, the Abyssal Elder simply didn't understand why Lin Ming understood the laws of the 33 heavens, and Lin Ming's onslaught of attacks was so fierce and wild that he didn't have the time to think about this. But now that he saw a human of the 33 heavens emerge from Lin Ming's body, he suddenly realized what was occurring. You aren't an abyssal demon at all. The Abyssal Elder's eyes turned blood red. Still, he couldn't figure out why he sensed the purest abyssal bloodline pulsing from Lin Ming's body. But in a mere instant he no longer had the luxury to ponder this. The Essence Spirit Embryo Stone spear already came cutting toward his neck. Gotcha! In this crucial moment, the Abyssal Elder opened his alligator-wide jaws and bit down on the spear. The grinding of metal against metal pained the ears. However, Lin Ming's attacks were like a storm, a barrage that came without end. At this time, a purple-clothed Lin Ming and a blue-clothed Lin Ming also rushed out from his body. These were Lin Ming's soul-forging avatar and essence-gathering avatar. A sharp spiritual sword shot out from between the purple-clothed Lin Ming's eyebrows, shooting straight into the Abyssal Elder's spiritual sea. And at this time, the blue-clothed Lin Ming grasped a short lance and swept towards the area beneath the Abyssal Elder's ribs. This attack point was exactly where the Abyssal Elder had been wounded just a moment ago. This was an attack to add injury upon injuries. The Abyssal Elder's pupils shrank. These mighty and swift attacks rained down on him like hail, and it was no longer possible for him to dodge. Against two attacks that came crashing down on him at the same time, he could only block one. Without any consideration, the Abyssal Elder instinctively formed a protective demon barrier in his spiritual sea to guard against the purple-clothed Lin Ming's soul attack. When it came to abyssals, their mental and spiritual defenses were their weakest, and their mortal bodily defenses were their strongest. In such a situation he certainly had to defend his spiritual sea first. Otherwise, if his soul was shaken, it would be difficult to deal with anything that followed. Gotcha! The spiritual sword crashed into the protective demon barrier and broke apart. But at this time, the short lance struck the Abyssal Elder's body, causing him to vomit out a mouthful of black blood and sending his body flying away like a broken kite. But while he tumbled away, the Abyssal Elder's eyes flashed with a sharp light. He borrowed the momentum of the strike to plunge away, rushing far away from Lin Ming. He wanted to flee. He knew that this was a trap purposefully aimed at him, and he also knew that he couldn't win in a fight, thus he had no intention of tangling himself up here with Lin Ming. Rather, he first thought of fleeing into the Void Sea. Then he could go to the high-level figures of the Demon Association and report this shocking news to them, that there was a being of the 33 heavens capable of disguising himself as an abyssal demon, and even simulate the accompanying abyssal aura. This was a disguise that not even a true divinity was able to see through. This was information that was absolutely capable of placing the abyssals on guard against the 33 heavens. Moreover, what was most notable was that Lin Ming's aura didn't seem to be that of the ancient race descendants born in the dark abyss, but from one of the current races of the 33 heavens. This information was even more important. Of all the abyssals capable of stepping into the true divinity realm, none were weak. Even though this abyssal elder had been seriously wounded, he could still erupt with an incomparably terrifying strength for a short period of time. And at this time, what lay in front of the abyssal elder was the grand mist force field that blocked off the surrounding space.